So there's this game online that everyone says they hate, and all the marketing for it at that time was pure right-wing grifter vitriol, and the reception was so bad, the team behind it had been split up between different studios. But I liked it. In fact, I was going to play it on my own, like not for the channel, but literally 3 minutes into the game, after the character creator, I realised it was worth taking note of. And don't get me wrong, I'm a total sheep, bar black sheep, 3 unks full, one for the master crack of the whip, all that good stuff, right? And I make no bones about that. And if the herd says they like a game, so do I. But if they say it's bad, so do I, right? I have no opinions of my own. But there have been 3 games this year that I have gone totally the other way on. Avowed was great. Bloodlines 2 was a stunner. But also, Dragon Age Veilguard was great. It looked amazing, right? It's an ARPG like the last 3 games in the series have been, RIP Origins, and tells a linear story in a cool fantasy world. So why was it so hated that the group who made it have since been disbanded into other parts of the company, and it is widely considered the worst Dragon Age game and completely disavowed by most fans of the series? Hello everyone, and welcome to a retrospective playthrough of Dragon Age Veilguard, the 4th entry in the Dragon Age series, and the one most mired in controversy upon release. Dragon Age began life in 2009 and was a continuation of classic BioWare RPGs of old, their previous one being Baldur's Gate 2, right? Lead writer and therefore kind of creator, let's be honest, was David Gaider, who also wrote several novels in the series, of which I read one. In this retrospective, I will be doing a heavily edited playthrough with plenty of asides to discuss anything the game brings up where relevant. Before that, however, let's start with some background. We've got to get the purity test out of the way early so you know what to argue with me about. I have played all 3 previous Dragon Age games, but only when they released, no recent replays. And I'm a pretty chilled, casual player, if I'm honest, so I've never finished any of them. Or if I did, I literally can't remember, as Origins was like 16 years ago, and even Inquisition was 11 years ago, right? That's mad. I think the only reason I know what happens in Dragon Age Origins is because I watched someone else's retrospective. I know that dragons are a thing, it's in the name. I remember Grey Wardens of the Blight, of course. I remember vaguely enjoying all the games, enough that another installment in the series was a must-buy for me. You know, BioWare, Baldur's Gate, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, all good vibes for a gamer of a certain age. Or, as people call me now, an unk. However, the only marketing I saw for Veilguard was exclusively reactionary anti-trans content due to one of the companions. And as this game has sold under expectations and the dev team broken up, an analysis of its failure would have to include the marketing at this point. Doubly so because the game has released in the current age of social media, whereas previous entries could be considered as not released at a time when marketing strategies were significantly different. I will discuss this when I discuss that companion. I won't get into it right now. This is an RPG with a focus on companion stories. As such, the discussion on the companion's issues isn't optional. It is invited and therefore mandatory in any video covering Veilguard. The fact this even deserves a note at the start goes to show how intense that anti-trans hate train for Veilguard really was. I genuinely do not remember any other marketing for the game. Any gamer that manages to watch YouTube and not get anti-trans content in their feed is truly threading the needle. I can't take 2 steps on YouTube without being told who I need to hate next. My playthrough was 52 hours, and cutting together a 3-minute compilation of incredibly bad and cringy dialogue would be super easy, barely an inconvenience, because 3 minutes would be 1/1000th of my playthrough. I could find 1/1000th of my playthrough of bad dialogue in Expedition 33, and I'm firmly in the camp that that game was a masterpiece. Considering how expensive these games are to make and that it's by a big studio, by a big publisher, the fact I can only think of negative marketing is pretty wild. Absolutely insane, to be fair. But this game took heavy flack before releasing. Keep that in mind. So a lot of these comments are going to be about things people said in the heat of the moment. Pre-release provisos done. Let's check out the opening tutorial kind of gameplay. If they've done it right, this will be a microcosm of the overall game, showing us every system we can expect to see. Oh, and a final note on WTF Veilguard is, so Chronomancer shenanigans, but all of this intro and any time you see me on screen was written about 6 months after I finished the game. Everything else was written in the heat of the moment as I was still in the middle of the playthrough. So one thing I hadn't fully realized was that in truth, Veilguard is not an RPG as an old timer like me would think of such. It's not Baldur's Gate, right? It's an action game, but it's an action game that has its roots in an RPG and so continues a few of those surface level tropes to hook fans of the series along for the ride. If you look at the Final Fantasy reboots, they've done exactly the same thing. I guess this is just the way of the modern ARPG. If you accept that this game is a left-click simulator with a story, you will have set your expectations correctly. If you are expecting to craft your own story and have a set of systems to create a truly unique, immersive, and emergent gameplay experience, you will be very disappointed. As I was playing, I was expecting the emergent gameplay RPG experience. I loved Veilguard, but it takes me a while to realize that. Let's go. As with all good RPGs, we start with the character creator. This creator is very in-depth and was so lauded it is available on its own as a demo. It's honestly very cool, but to be entirely fair, I just couldn't get a good face outside of using a few of the presets. I have seen others get amazing results, but it wasn't for me. As it was my first run through, and at this point I didn't know I was playing Rook and not a kind of Baldur's Gate style creating my own story, I just made me. And of course, me is defined purely by removing the hair. I went with a yellow tattoo because in my head it's gold. That's fun for me, but not at all supported in any Dragon Age lore. You then pick a class, a rogue, warrior, or mage. Each of these classes can go towards one of 3 specializations. I went with a rogue, intending to become a duelist because it looked flashy and cool. You can also see how the classes will look in their endgame armor, their beginner armor, and their casual attire. I really like this, every RPG should have it. I want to know how I will look when I'm killing God, but also how I'll look when I struggle against a large rat. You then pick your backstory. This will open a few dialogue options for you throughout the game. Over my 60 hours played, I got maybe a dozen unique options, perhaps. I didn't count them, just guessing. I went with the Antivan Crows because I'm a rogue, so why wouldn't I want to be an assassin? Note that, once again, you are playing a fixed character. Despite the fact I am playing a literal assassin, my backstory is I freed some slaves. In fact, all of these backstories have the core theme of you freed some slaves. I thought that was kind of odd that the backstory for each is just changing the reason why or the methods used to free the slaves from various evil factions, but they really want Rook to have freed slaves. But again, they're telling one story in Veilguard, and this is, knowing what I know now, a good way to set the tone. You don't know it yet, but the backstories you're picking from are the main faction reputations you will interact with throughout the game. You then pick a playstyle, which is a fun way of saying difficulty setting. I go with Adventurer because that's the normal setting. Then you pick a name which is literally never used in the game and pick a voice. We open on Varric, a character from the last 2 games, and he's setting the scene very literally. Long story short, a guy called Solus, also known as the Dreadwolf, also known as Fen'Harel, also known as the God of Deceit, is casting a ritual to open the veil, which will give all the demons of the Fade free access to the real world, which will inevitably kill millions. We found him in Minrathous, capital city of the Tevinter Imperium. We have found a local guide, Nev, to track him down. We open on a seamless cut from painting to gameplay and our character, Rook, walking into a bar and making our first decision. Demand or discuss. My Rook is a cheeky thief with a silver tongue, so I will almost always be going for the middle option in every dialogue scene. That looks close enough to me once they give him a facial expression. That's not too bad, is it? So, what kind of guy am I? I'm a rogue, I'm a cheeky chap. That's what it is. And I'm getting by on my good looks, obviously, because I look like me. We sweet talk our way to finding where Nev Gallus is, and the Venatori cultists decide to fight us anyway, or at least until Varric threatens them with Bianca, his crossbow. We're told that Nev is the best detective ever with a lead on Solus. We get a shot of the Archon Plaza and it's annoyed and starts shooting the city. This does look pretty, I must say. Or it's shooting the demons invading the city due to the ritual weakening the veil. I'm actually not quite sure. Either way, we run through Minrathous and find Harding, a dwarf who is working alongside us already as an Inquisition agent. We get our combat tutorial and I'll discuss combat a bit more once we finish the high stakes opening. We kill some demons, then some Venatori cultists, then Nev joins us. We see an Illuvian, which is a big elven mirror and is the in-game canon reason for how we managed to fast travel all around the continent that will become relevant later, don't worry. Once again, this is such a cool AF, that's as foretold, looking game. Great aesthetics. We get to the ritual and Varric says he's going to talk Solus out of it. We can either support Varric or not in his decision to have a chit-chat. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. He's about to, destroy the world? I genuinely don't know what he's doing at the moment. He's not going to change his mind because you have a chat. He's probably thought through the options, mate. We get to hear Harding and Nev's reasoning for picking one of the two options, and whichever we pick will get an approval from one and a disapproval from another. This is your basic tutorial for how dialogue decisions are made in the game. You get information from an NPC, your companions will weigh in with their thoughts, and then they will like or dislike your decision. Exactly what I would expect from a BioWare RPG. This is the formula they have used in all of their games for decades, and they sure do love a dialogue wheel mechanic.
Rook, take care of the team for me.
I was already doing that, wasn't I? Oh, I guess Varric was the leader, right. This being the tutorial, of course what happens here has zero effect on anything, or so I believe, but we're learning and learning is fun. He looks so stupid. It's because he's bald, isn't it? And oh no, I've just roasted myself. As that's happening and we think it won't work, we decide to mess with some statues to disrupt the ritual and we learn the next piece of game big decision making. We get to pick one of our characters to join us in sabotaging the ritual and one to beat off the demons on their own. No, there's no other way to say they were beating off the demons, thank you. Both characters give reasons for why they should be the one to join me. We pick Nev to join, and then we get another bit of tutorial, which is that sabotaging the ritual is zero gameplay, and this will carry on throughout the game, as I will discuss more later. I don't think this tutorial was supposed to be communicating that outside of combat and dialogue there is zero gameplay, but it did, and it was accurate. If only I had listened. We sabotage the statues, Varric and Solus get into a scuffle, and Varric gets stabbed while Rook briefly passes out before being led away by Harding. We see two gods rise up from the ritual site and the logo screen fades in. If you're going to do a fade in, fade out, it should be done, in my opinion, so that you actually, things are happening in between that you don't see. So later, I want to come back and see in between those cuts, something I did not know was done, which they hide from me now so that later they can recontextualize my knowledge. And it's like, oh, twist. But it's a twist from the past that already happened. We then have a dream sequence chat with Solus. He claims he wasn't destroying the world. We do not probe on this point at all, and we ask why we're here and where we are. We're in a blood magic dream prison for Solus, who is trapped here. It's not the Fade, exactly, it's a pocket dimension, a prison cut off from everything else. So he expositions us, and the Evanuris, the elven gods we just saw who escaped from the prison Solus is now in, wanted to rule over all elves, but Solus rebelled, which made the gods level up their power by creating the Blight. But Solus still somehow won and imprisoned them. That's it. That's all the backstory. We question the truth as Solus had just been bringing down the veil, which would lead to the demonic invasion, and Solus just agrees that was his plan. Yeah. Solus, the elven god, the Dreadwolf, also known as the god of lies, treachery, and rebellion, depending on the story. Solus says the gods, Elganan and Gillenane, are now our issue to deal with. Keep in mind that the Evanuris are ancient evil gods, and the Illuvian, despite being similar words, have nothing to do with each other. The Illuvian was the mirror thing. Having two made-up words, both starting with the same three letters, is a rough choice, I'm not going to lie. We wake up and Varric is on bed rest, but otherwise fine, although he won't be joining us in the new field. Varric says that as he's injured, he passes leadership of the team to Rook, who may now continue the job of stopping Solus, which of course has been successfully achieved, even if somewhat poorly, and with the unintended consequence of releasing two elven gods who want to destroy the world. Our goal is to stop them, and we complain a lot that we wish Varric was okay and that we aren't ready to lead. Okay. Oh, that cake, damn. Nev walks in and we see that her face is all bruised because we chose her to join us in stopping the ritual. Now, considering the options were join us in pushing over statues or fend off a horde of demons solo, the fact it was the statue pushing companion that got the negative consequences is odd, I'm not going to lie. There was no hint during the dialogue that was the dangerous job. I thought that was the safe job because I'd be doing the work. Is it subtle messaging that combat is always the safe job, or perhaps that anyone who joins us will get hurt? Either way, this is the game showing us that our big decisions can have consequences. Of note, I will say that the number of decisions that have this level of consequence in the entire game is like 5, maybe. A single decision that had a clear consequence. Entire game, maybe 5. There are smaller decisions, but ones that have this level, not too many. Nev tells us the giant mirror we escaped through, called an alluvion again, took us to something called the Lighthouse, a special place in the Fade. Varric goes to sleep. There's a mirror in the corner of the room that lets us redo our character look, but not our background or class. We run around the lighthouse for a bit of looting and doing a few puzzles. We check in with Nev and apologise in angst over getting her hurt, and she says she's fine, she did her job, and that's what matters. We then get the option to romance her. I do not. I am no romanti-panty, if you will. We talk to Harding, who says the lighthouse feels safer than the regular Fade somehow. All very loosey-goosey at this point, of course. We do not get an option to romance Harding, weirdly. You would have thought you'd get one for both, right?
We can't go
Yeah,
blind.
what a ridiculous thing to say. Oh, let's just run straight at them? Harding, you idiot. How are you not already dead? Doesn't make any sense. We sit them both down and tell them that I talk to Solus in my head. Nev feels that Solus isn't a god, just a powerful elf, and Harding thinks he clearly is a god. We can side with either, but I tell them that the words we used don't matter, god or not, he's powerful AF, as foretold. We decide that the next steps are investigating the ritual site. Okay, we've seen the opening gameplay and the game looks beautiful, so let's talk about how beautiful it looks for me and for you, maybe. Mostly subjective things, but of course also some objective things. I'm a big fan of things working towards a unified goal. If you are discussing slavery and racism, but you have cutesy Stardew Valley graphics, that gives a different feeling and legitimacy to the same discussion in a mud text RPG, or in an RTS, or in an anime versus in a live action movie, right? Things work together. And of course, in gaming, this could be due to limitations more than desire, but we've got to work with what we've got. Veilguard next to Zero Dawn or Final Fantasy XVI is a good example to see the stylization. Realism versus stylization tells a story, adds credibility, whether intended or not. The technology existed for this to be a realistic game. They went with a light stylization instead. Veilguard is undeniably a beautiful game. The environments are stunning. I call this a wallpaper game. Almost every shot could be screen capped and used as your desktop wallpaper. Every single conversation is cinematically lit and the environments are stunning. And I'm not using hyperbole when I say it is a wallpaper game. Once I finished, I went back and took a few screenshots and they are now my wallpapers. The environments are small, but we'll discuss that in gameplay because the skyboxes are epic. I love fantasy, and whenever I think of fantasy, I think of things in the sky that shouldn't be in the sky. Sky buildings, sky ships, sky islands, sky my hopes and dreams, which in reality are grounded and dull. In fantasy, absolutely fucking untethered though. I don't care if it's magic or malfunctioning gravitic drives. I want large structures in the sky, and if your fantasy or sci-fi world doesn't have that, it's not a fantasy world for me. And coincidentally, that aesthetic is exactly Dragon Age's aesthetic. It got me hook, line, and sinker. Islands and structures in the sky. To a fault, if I might add. That's literally every skybox. Not just one or two. Every environment has random stuff in the sky. The other thing that every skybox has is big buildings. Massive, bloody buildings. Everywhere. Brilliant sense of scale in this game. Absolutely love it. I guarantee you that in editing this video, I haven't shown you the exact scenes I think really blew me away, but hopefully I did the job well enough to get the point across. The urban streets of Minrathous, the elven ruins of Arlathan Forest, and the deep roads being a standouts for me. The environments are a bloody delight. Great. With one minor exception, which has to be noted, and that is the Fade. For anyone unaware, the Fade is basically magic hell. There you go, done. The entire game looks how the Fade should look. Lots of rocks and stuff in the sky. That should be how the Fade looks. But when everything has stuff in the air, it makes the Fade look like everywhere else. The Fade goes from what is supposed to be a weird dreamscape nightmare realm to looking like every other environment with nothing about it standing out. And I think that's a real shame. This feels like a real monkey's paw situation because I don't want them to take the cool stuff out of the other environments, which seems like the easiest way to make the Fade special. Don't do that. Make the Fade extra special, not everything else mid. That is my one minor nitpick about the environments. They could have added weird gravity twisting to the Fade to make it special, I think. You know, when you jump from one platform to the next, you flip to the ceiling. But your camera flips as well, so it's like it becomes the floor. Easy win for them, but look, it is what it is. And the environments are photorealistic, by the way. Yes, they have crazy fantasy stuff happening in them, but a blade of grass looks like a blade of grass, not a cartoon blade of grass. So yeah, wallpaper game. Genuinely above and beyond anything else I've seen when it comes to the combination of technology and aesthetics. Which brings us to the character models. You've already seen it as you've watched so far. You've seen the faces. The entire game looks like everyone has a slightly cartoony Instagram filter applied. That's the best way I can explain it, right? Every face is smooth. I believe this was done for practicality and to avoid uncanny valley issues. With so many facial close-ups and technology being so close to photorealistic, you either go all in and make every single frame perfect and super linear, or you go a bit stylistic. Knowing how insane game crunch is in the industry and the little bit of the background of how this project came to be and the issues it had, it's better to deliberately avoid the uncanny. And so much of the game has brilliant facial animation on close-ups, they had to figure out a system for this, right? Personally, I like the style. I think it goes well with the fantastic environments. In fairness though, every single conversation is lit and animated brilliantly, and if they had to not do photorealism to get this level of acting into the characters, then I love it. And it still looks absolutely amazing, to be clear. Easily one of the best looking games a year after release. The negative here is, what does that communicate to the player? Dragon Age, a game that talks about slavery and racism and subjugation, but then gives you filter smooth faces. I quite legitimately think it lessens any statements that the game would like to make. In fairness, that's alongside the fact that all of the racism, slavery, and other political issues it comments on are such pillow-fisted takes anyway, right? It's not hard-hitting commentary in the first place, okay? Now look, I personally don't care. I don't come to my Dragon Age for my political takes, but it's something to keep in mind. And before you're wondering, no, I don't think that floating islands and dragons lowers the impact of political takes. Thank you very much. It's called an allegory, mate. Look it up. They're racist towards orcs, and that actually means they're racist against Oh, who would have guessed? They're trying to exterminate all invaders from an alien planet, and that's actually a statement on Oh, never would have guessed authors use fantasy and sci-fi to make real political statements. What a shocker. And you're saying that can extend to a game? Because art? Oh. Anyway, I think the game looks great, and I like the character models. I don't have any issue with it, even though I acknowledge that until this point, Dragon Age as a series has tried to be very realistic. Yes, it's a change. No, I don't fear change. Let's all try and keep that mental plasticity working. I've only talked about the character models because it was so heavily criticized in the release build-up period. Again, wallpaper game, and yes, that includes the characters. Since I played, they actually added something in a patch that removes the really heavy bloom from the game, and actually that change alone makes everything look much grittier now if you want to do that. But that was after my playthrough. Oh, but actually, I can talk about two other things as we're discussing graphics. Firstly, spell effects. They're bright and flashy and cool. I really like them. Everything is clear and I can see what's happening. Yes, when I'm getting mobbed by 6 guys and shot at by 2, I lose track of things, but that's because I suck at games, to be clear. Also, the hair in the game is amazing. This is literally the best hair in a game to date. It's so good, it actually makes me wish I had hair. No other game has made me wish I had hair. As such, yes, I fully understand the irony in a game with the best hair. I've made my character look like me and have no hair. I know what you're thinking. This is a wish fulfillment game. Why didn't you give yourself hair, Andy? Because I like how I look. Thank you. I don't need hair to look good. But definitely a real pickle at hair selection, let me tell you. Final note on graphics is the classic reaction system. It is green when you can parry it, it is red when you can't. These are subtle effects with no hard outline. I think this is a good mixture between keeping the combat natural but also having combat prompts. However, I am red-green colorblind. In some games, this isn't a problem, and I can tell the difference between the shades of red and green used. In this game, it is massively a problem. The particular shades they've used and the softness of the prompt is so close to each other that I was unable to react to combat. I had to learn every enemy's moveset to know which could be blocked and which couldn't. It made the game much harder for me. Yes, they have colorblind options, but so you're aware how these work is they apply a filter to all colors on the screen. For my type, it takes all reds and makes them blue. For combat, this is fine, but for every other color in the game, it makes everything look super weird. I would like a specific combat indicator toggle, make it more obvious with an outline, and let me set my blockable and unblockable colors independently of other game filters that get applied to the game. Minor colorblind aside, did you know that Windows has this filter as well that can be applied to everything on your computer at all times? So I can watch YouTube and with all the reds, including the logo and everything turned to blue. It's weird, and I really just want the particular shade and saturation of the red changed, not have the red removed. I understand that culturally, green means go and red means stop, but F that in the A, do a better system, TY. Oh, and just a heads up, if you like what I'm doing here, do consider algorithm engagement for a tiny channel like mine. Subscribe, a like, a comment, and I stream on Twitch. All right, let's keep it going. The Alluvian takes us straight to the Arlathan forest where the ritual took place. I have to confess, I thought the ritual happened in Minrathous, but I guess I was wrong, I don't know. We come across the leaders of the Veil Jumpers, the group of elves that live in this forest. They're called Strife and Irulan, but as I will never use their names again, you can forget those names. And going forwards, you don't need to know one-off character names, let's be honest, so I will just point at the screen and say that dude or this gal, etc. The Veil Jumpers are one of our main factions that we could have chosen to have in our backstory, and they're experts in ancient elven artifacts, and they are in fact fighting an ancient elven artifact. I think. In Arlathan, we're fighting the most nothing enemy in the game. They have no backstory, they aren't a united group, they have no leader. They're just ancient constructs. Every other zone, the enemies have a huge backstory. Here, they're nothing. Honestly, a fair enemy to put us into first so that we can focus on our characters and Solas and evil gods and ignore the big glowing dudes with axes. In fairness, they're coming to life now due to Solas's ritual, so I guess that's vaguely related to us, maybe. They want us to find an elf named Balara, and we leave Nev behind to help them because she's injured. Okay. We then fight our first larger enemy, which goes okay. That's unfair. I want to block it. Go for it, my son. Okay. I'm going to heal because I fucked up. We find Balara and we are accidentally in a bubble that you can walk into but not out of, so we need to shut it down. By the way, this never ever comes up again. This is not a standard thing the game does. It's just a one-off random thing. Balara joins the party. the third companion to our roster, and we run around looting stuff, and she is an elf who is fascinated with the ancient artifacts and so tells us these are riled up spirits that are inhabiting the artifacts. They are not demons. We then fight some demons, amusingly, where we get our first actual tutorial showing that we can use companion abilities. We level up and are shown our skill tree for the first time, which I will go over another time. We see a giant floating castle, which is an armory, pretty standard for old elven ruins, apparently. Then we get our first power crystals, which, again, I will talk about later, but this is the third prong of Veilguard's trident of gameplay. I had claimed it was combat, talking, and walking between the two, and these puzzles are the walking between the two. But I will discuss when we get to a larger puzzle because this is still early, so we could assume it's just telling us that, hey, this is a thing that will be built upon later. We then get something that is used in puzzles often, which is your companion exploration abilities. They're all different, but they all work the same. It's just like thematically different. You look at something in the environment and get told to press tab and use the ability. Okay, I'll block it. I can't block it. Okay. I can't tell that that's red. That's really frustrating. We then see a creature eating a halla. A halla is a deer, but a fantasy deer. Anyway, the monster is a darkspawn, the overall generic name for something that is blight infected. I'm actually not entirely sure what exactly blighted monsters are, if they're infected humans or spirits or demons or simply creatures unique to the blight. Valaris suggests that if the gods are blighted, as Solas is saying, then maybe they're linked to the Darkspawn somehow, which seems like a solid proposition actually. We get to use a ballista to shoot open a wall and then mow down some Darkspawn. Yes, this is a turret section in a fantasy world and in an RPG instead of an FPS. This is in line with a lot of other things in Veilguard, so honestly it tracks. We find the ancient elven thingy that has an ancient elven name that never comes up again, so I won't use it, and Balara deactivates it, but also an ogre turns up and it's our first boss fight. The ogre is armoured, so we need to take it down with quick attacks to break its armour. Then it is a trainer baby ogre, so only has 3 moves we need to deal with. A triple hit around it that can be blocked, and a big hit that can't be blocked, and a jump attack if it needs to close the distance. We also get our ultimate ability unlocked. Ogre wrecked. Balara does her thing, and that summons the archive spirit, although the crystal needs fixing so it doesn't actually last long. We teleport to the Veil Jumper camp, who say that they lost contact with Demeter's Crossing, a local village, and their scouts never reported back. We find our first faction merchant, and you can upgrade it to rank 4 throughout the game. You can sell stuff, and you can buy a few things that are faction related for your rook, unlocking more as the faction rep increases. I will explain the loot system a bit later, but the items you can buy and the items you can find out in the world are actually one and the same. We see what's left of the capital city, Arlathan. Oh, that does look pretty nice. Can't lie. Now look, I freaking love floating islands and floating cities and floating ruins. Wallpaper game. Yes, king. We meet up with Nev at the dock and take the boat to Demeter's Crossing. It's extra foggy and there are no people out. The entrance to the town has been blocked by the people, and so we take a side alley and it is completely overrun with blight. This introduces us to the blight and the glowing red blight cysts. If you see a glowing red blight cyst, you pop it and it will open a pathway so you can progress. Another one of Veilguard's puzzles. We pass villagers and they've been infected by the blight but aren't aggressive towards us yet. I don't really know what this means. We then reach the heart of the blight and the missing veil jumpers have been killed, unsurprisingly. One is in the process of dying and confirms he's seen the gods and that they did this. They performed a blood ritual to release the blight. Cool. I suppose I should say that blood magic is the ultimate sin in Dragon Age, just so you're aware. Necromancy is all good, totally legal, no problem, but blood magic, instant execution. We find Mayor Julius, the person who had technically we find Mayor Julius, the person we had technically been sent to talk to, and he's all wrapped up in blight, but as we move towards him, we have our first dragon reveal. Very cool, great sense of scale, big fan, 10/10, would bang. Luckily for us, Gillenane calls the dragon away. Pure, unadulterated, raw dogging, Deus Ex Machina style. We talk to the mayor, who says the gods had infected him, and that's why he willingly gave over his town to the gods. It falls a bit flat because very clearly the gods could have taken it unwillingly, but okay, fine, sure, I guess. He asks for help, and we choose to spare him because I'm a good guy. At the end of each part, and I wish they'd call it chapter, because part sounds like me calling an ancient elven device just a thingy. I can do it, the game can't do it. We get an animation that sums things up for everyone who skips conversation, and it's voiced by Varric, so I shall call them Varric cartoons from now on. We report back to the Veil-Jumper leadership, and Morrigan turns up, which is exciting due to nostalgia, but otherwise she has nothing to do with this game, just to be clear. Morrigan confirms that although Solas is in fact a dick, he was right to imprison the gods as they were going to destroy the world, so fair play on that one, Solas. Isn't Morrigan meant to be, like, a bit of a bish? What's going on? She says that we should find the dagger Solas was using for his ritual, the one he stabbed Varric with before dropping it in the scuffle. We return to the ritual site and find that Harding blames herself for not taking the shot at Solas, and Nev tells her she's being silly, which she is, so there you go. Harding, as we can now tell, is the emotional and compassionate one. Nev is the practical one. Yet another of the puzzle mechanics turns up in the form of the beam generator. We get our info about stragglers and takedowns here, 4 hours into the game. Look at what a crazy amount of camera drag. Like, it's pulling me so hard. It's crazy. After a bit of ruin raiding and construct and darkspawn fighting, we find the lyrium dagger. Harding takes it and becomes possessed by something. This then leads to our second big boss fight, the lyrium ghoul. No, I die. It shows my feet. 3 hours in, first death to a boss fight. You can't really argue with it, can you? I have to redo this boss fight 4 times. It's not like he was super tough, but he was the toughest guy so far, and also the first tough guy that spawns ads. This was a big learning curve fight for me. For some reason, I don't even know why, he wasn't that difficult. After killing the boss, we get a big bad god cutscene, and they say that as the lyrium dagger is lost from their sight, they will need to craft a new dagger from red lyrium. Back at the lighthouse, we learn that dwarves aren't connected to the Fade, which means that no dwarf can use magic. We now get the first possible Harding romance moment, which I do not take, but it's still worth noting just how early you need to engage physically if that's how you swing. Just like before, this is the lowest possible bar for flirting. You're not a problem, Jesus. All of these, I trust you, like that is more flirting than you're not a problem. And with the struggle on the lyrium ghoul done, now's a good time to discuss the core gameplay of Veilguard, because very honestly, this is a game of 3 parts: combat, talking, and running between the first 2 things. If you do not like the combat, I cannot recommend this game at all, because the action part of action role-playing game is really key. I played a rogue, so where needed, we'll be using rogue-specific examples. The combat has melee light attack, melee heavy attack, ranged light attack, and ranged heavy attack. Holding shift will swap to quick attacks. You have 4 abilities that cost your resource to use. You have a dodge roll to avoid enemy attacks, and finally, you can block. The white marker above your head means an attack is coming soon. A green marker means block now for a perfect block. A red marker means the attack is unblockable. Enemies sometimes have extra health in the form of either a shield or armor. A shield needs to be shot from ranged to deplete it faster. Armor needs you to use a quick attack to deplete it faster. You can stagger an enemy, as some weapons do lower damage but higher stagger. And when an enemy's stagger bar is full, it takes a knee, and you can do a takedown, which is a big damage attack. You also have detonations. These come from your abilities. Some abilities won't just deal damage, they'll also apply an effect, while other abilities can trigger that effect, which detonates the ability, causing extra damage. Class-specific variations are that warriors have a permanent block, not requiring any timing to successfully block, but they can't parry. Rogues can parry, which means incoming attacks when blocked during the perfect block green marker allows you to follow up with damage, but you have no permanent block. It's all timed blocks only. Rogues get a bow, which can spam range damage very effectively, but warriors get a shield, which is much slower. But let's be honest, infinitely cooler. Mages get permanent beam weapons for ranged and an additional bolts for ranged, and they get a permanent block. That's the entire system. I like it, found it engaging. I found the fights just hard enough that I felt I needed to get better, just frustrating enough to keep me engaged, but still I ultimately won, even if I had to use all my potions and companion heal spells. Oh right, yeah, so you have healing potions that heal you, obviously. And companions have their own abilities that can trigger when you want them to do their thing. I did try using detonations and picking companions based on those, but ultimately I ended up always picking 2 companions with a heal ability, and this is 100% the way to play the game, as those extra heals help me survive more than a little bit of extra damage possibly could have. In general, the ranged companions have a healing ability, while the melee companions have a taunt and can tie up enemies. I found that although yes, they tied up enemies, there were always enough enemies to still hit me, so I still wanted heals. But yeah, the combat system in Veilguard was fun. Not so fun that I want to play through everything again just to fight more, but enough fun that I would if I had more free time, and there were no other games waiting to be played, but there's always more games to be played, obviously. My longest fight was against a dragon called the Formless One, because I fought him when I was level 34, and he was level 40. It took me almost exactly 20 minutes, I think it was like 21, and he goes through different phases, he summons ads, it was intense. I think I actually peaked at that fight because everything else was easier and faster. So I jumped to the end of the difficulty curve on that, arguably one of the toughest bosses in the game, or the most highest level boss in the game. But it was great fun, and that's good because if I didn't enjoy the combat, then this game would suck because it is an action RPG, not just an RPG, you know? My only regret with being a rogue is that apparently there's a shield throwing warrior build, and I love me some Warcraft Paladin, so it's a shame I missed that. After completing my run through with a rogue, I quickly went back and did a few hours on nightmare difficulty with a warrior, then a mage, just to see what I was missing, and oh my god, despite the difficulty jump into nightmare, rogue is easily the hardest task to play. No permanent block and no easy ranged was such a hindrance, at least at low levels. I was forged in the crucible of my only defense being perfect parry timings, and having learned the game based on that, swapping over to permanent block felt like I was significantly reducing the difficulty level, not increasing it to nightmare. And you might think that the rogues must do much more damage to balance things out, but I did not feel that at all. If anything, it felt like the other classes did more damage as well as being easier, as well as upping the difficulty level. Probably not true, but definitely how it felt. I will stress at this point, I enjoyed the combat, but it took a while for me to get there, and it had a real muddy middle, you know, like where I'd learned the system, but hadn't yet gotten to a point where my build can get fun with the unlocks. But this is also based on a good balance of the rogue's perfect parry system. In a sense, it's similar to Expedition 33's parry, take no damage, and deal damage in return system. If I'd played through as a mage or warrior, maybe I'd have just been bored. Another Varric cartoon telling us that Harding is now connected to the Titans and the Song of the Stone and all of Dwarven history, which I did not get from our conversations, but there we go. We can have another conversation with Harding in her hovel, but it's just a continuation of how bricked up she is. We then get access to our own room and we can decorate it. There's a lot of decor to buy throughout the game from both world drops and merchants in the form of individual items or overall themes. I never do any of this, so moving on. You know, I'm just going to say it. The design choice to make doors auto-open just makes so much sense. I don't need the immersion of opening a door, aka walking up to it, standing in front of it for 2 seconds and opening. That's lame. Just open a door. That's fine. That's how the game should be. That is possibly Dragon Age Veilguard's greatest addition to the milieu of computer games. And the hair, which is ironic because obviously I've removed hair from my guy. Our room gives us the meditation candles, which is how we talk to Solus when we need to, which we do in fact do right now. Notice here that in our last conversation 3 hours ago in real world time, something we said to him then is referenced here. Nice, but to be clear, has no effect on anything in the story, just kind of a generic callback showing that, like, hey, your stuff, your decisions makes sense, or we track it, I guess. One would hope that there are always callbacks and references to, my character and decisions, not just the few times it gets specifically called out like it does here. In this Solas tete-a-tete, we are convincing him that we deserve the knowledge to kill the gods. My reasoning is that I'm his only choice, and as he's stuck in my head, that felt like pretty solid logic to me. Solas confirms that the two gods, when faced with Solas's rebellion, needed more power, and so they unleashed the Blight, and don't really care that it's horrible and just view it as a useful source of power for themselves. As they're freshly unleashed, they're trying to unleash the Blight again, and to do that, they need to pierce the veil with something like a lyrium dagger, which we recently acquired, if you recall. So they need to make their own, which they can do, by the way. The second thing the gods will need is followers. Why? I don't know, god stuff, I guess. As such, our goal becomes to seek out the powerful and tyrants in the world, because by chasing them, they will lead us to the gods that they will now be worshipping. Because you know how it is, evil gods in all of these fantasy worlds give out their gifts very liberally and freely, whereas good gods don't at all. Hence why tyrants will instantly fall in line with the evil gods, power hungry, eating itself, all that good jazz. We get access to the wardrobe in our room, and that's nice, but you don't need to actually use the wardrobe. You can apply transmogs anywhere in the world. We chat to Varric again and have basically an identical conversation where once again we talk about how much we wish he was still the leader and not us. And we hurt Nev, and that's bad. But he says, it's okay, so all good, I guess.
A good leader isn't someone who never makes mistakes. It's someone who admits when they make one.
Yeah, but you could also not make mistakes. I mean, competency is quite important, I feel. We then chat with Nev, who says that it's odd that wisps are hanging around her room. Is this going to come back later? No. She suggests that we need to start putting together a team. The Antivan Crows have the Demon of Virantium, a master assassin mage killer, or we can track down the Shadow Dragons faction, who I believe Nev is a member of. Not really, but kind of. Valara has fixed the mirror, and then a random helpful spirit we're going to call the Caretaker acts as our guide. I ride out with Harding and Nev into the Fade. One applies Sundered and one detonates Sundered, and I hate Valara, easily the worst character. I'll discuss more later when we get to the companion stuff. We explore the Fade a bit, and I now need to explain the Fade and why Veilguard's interpretation of it kind of sucks. And it's because the rest of the game is so good. So let me explain. The Fade can be thought of as a realm of magic mixed with a bit of the afterlife. Normal living people should not ever end up here. It is heavily linked to magic going wrong if a human is in the Fade. Like a blood magic ritual messed up, and now you're in magical hell that's infested with demons. So the question of how does one visualize a demonic, magical, ethereal dreamscape is, of course, a pretty tough question. Islands breaking up and disconnected from each other, ignoring gravity is a good take. I like it, because as discussed, floating islands are cool. Ruins are cool. Combine them, and you have something that is cool. A nice and safe take. However, that exact style that would be perfect for the Fade is the style used for every environment in Veilguard. Everything is already so fantastical that the Fade looks like everything else. In a vacuum, it's a great take on the Fade, but when put next to Arlathan Forest, where we just came from, it looks normal. Arguably, it looks less cool than Arlathan, because Arlathan has the ancient elven ruins on top of the broken up floating islands thing. Now, I don't want them to make the other locations less fantastical, of course, but I really do think that the Fade needed to be ramped up a level. Just off the top of my head, the Fade is lacking its own vibe. I would suggest crystals. I don't know, magic crystals, I guess. We don't have that aesthetic fleshed out anywhere else, really, but more importantly, we needed parts where gravity flipped, as I've already mentioned. If you want to make something feel otherworldly to the player, make us go upside down. Have geometry above us that we have to walk on at some point. That discomforts people. do that. It doesn't have to be particularly complicated, but suddenly you can have rotating corridors and vaulting points that flip us and the camera. Easy. So yeah, that's my gripe with the Fade. They made it good, but not good enough to make it stand out from the rest of the good, fantastical environments. Truly a victim of their own success. And so we've run through the Fade to get to Treviso. I figure I'll start there as my background is Antivan Crow, so let's meet my homies, right? We learn about Treviso as we're shown around, and it's literally Venice. Like, I don't mean literally as in it's like not literally, as people sometimes use it. I mean it is literally Venice. Like literally Venice. There's no subtlety at all. It's Venice, and everyone here is Italian, and the Antivan Crows are the Italian mafia. That is the beginning and the end of Antivan deep cut lore. So anyway, it's been invaded by and is currently under Antam rule. Antam? Antam? I don't know. Pick an accent. The Antam are the Qunari, but I assume a specific brand of Qunari that never really gets broken down for us in-game. And in Veilguard, all Qunari are the bad guys, in essence. We don't see a good Qunari faction, even if there are specific Qunari that are good. We meet with the Antivan Crow leadership and we tell them we want to hire the Demon of Virantium. Popular knowledge says that he died a year ago, so quite why we don't know that, I don't know. Luckily, the leader tells us the secret that actually he's just been imprisoned in the ossuary. His actual name is Lucanus. So we travel to the ossuary, a prison under the sea. Harding points out that if we need an assassin, then we have me, which is a nice nod to my background choice, but my only response is that more is good. And honestly, fair take by me, I agree. More of everything would be good. Redundancies, there should be no one-man D capability in this bad boy. All of the ossuary's guards are dead, and we assume it's because of Solus's ritual unleashing demons and prisoners in here. We get to our first blood crystal puzzle. The crystal we want to remove is shielded, so we need to trace back the red lines to the first unshielded blood crystal. We are introduced to Lucanus as he kills his jailers using cool-looking demon wings. He says that if we break him out, he will take our contract to kill 2 gods. Lovely. That's how all of the crows talk, by the way. It's literally all just contracts and coffees with them. Oh, you know what? That's actually a really fun name for a cozy slice of life fantasy book. Contracts and coffees. And you're a retired assassin, right? Ganache and gods. Evil over eclairs. Demons and dicks. Like spotted dicks. The classic English pudding. Yeah, I don't know how we came up with that one either. We fight through some Venatori, loot some chests, do some blood crystal puzzles, and get to see Lucanus' special exploration ability, which is using his demon called Spite to summon platforms for us. We then finish the ossuary by killing the jailer, Calavan, who we need to kill because they hold a vial of Lucanus' blood, with which they could control him. Keep that in mind, remember it. If you have a vial of his blood, you can control him, due to, some demon mumbo-jumbo blood magic stuff. Also, killing the jailer was Lucanus' contract, and he never leaves a contract uncontracted. There's talk of his boss, Zara, who is the one that had the idea for possessing Lucanus. Oh, blimey. For fuck's sake. Oh, piss yourself, you slag. I consider this jailer to be the first true boss fight in the game. It's a custom level that we can never return to again, kind of. He's casting crazy magic spells all over the arena, he turns into a demon halfway through, and then returns with a full barrier when we take down that demon. This is very standard Veilguard boss battle scenario tactic stuff. As a rogue, I have to zip around all over the place to avoid the spells, and I'm learning a lot about how rogue combat plays. I also didn't know any better at this point in the game and assumed this was kind of default gameplay for everyone, and didn't know how much easier all of this would be if I was a warrior or a mage. We kill the boss and see Spite the demon for the first time and how he interacts with Lucanus. The big treasure chest at the end of the boss is a common reinforced longbow. Look, to space out these interjections, I'm going to wait a bit to explain how loot in Veilguard actually works and why the big chest is giving us common items, but it makes sense, although it is not communicated at all when you're starting the game, so this was very confusing for me. We return to the crows and the matriarch that rules over them has been killed by Zara. Or that's what they want us to think, but they never actually say it, so I left this conversation relatively confused as to if she'd been killed or captured. The insinuation is definitely that she's been killed, but the confusion and fact that no one's too broken up about it made me think she's only captured. Spoilers, she's been captured, not killed. Lucanus joins our team as that was the last contract he was given by the crows as payment for me breaking him out of the ossuary. Variant cartoon marks the end of a main quest, and then Lucanus and the ladies are yapping about demonic possession and how Lucanus can get rid of it, to which the answer is you just die if you want to not be possessed. We get to see Spite's effect on Lucanus and making him hurt to get what he wants. Before heading off to the Shadow Dragons, Balara wants a chat, and up until now I hadn't really made any big decisions on any of the companions.
Oh no!
What is that Disney shit?
Sorry.
Oh, I swear at things, I'm so funny, ha ha ha. But it was right here that solidified my absolute disgust for Balara. I hate her. She is written terribly. I didn't skip any dialogue in this game. I let every single line play out fully so that I had it recorded for this video. It was in this interaction right here that I decided to skip Balara's dialogue. I cannot stand this character, and she is written to be the most oops, I'm quirky Disney Marvel dialogue to try and make her interesting, but they missed the mark by a mile. Horrible character. Only dialogue skipped in a 56-hour playthrough. Cringe. Her only use narratively is that she can fix ancient elven artifacts, and she fixed the mirror, so I wish I had an option to dismiss her. Actually, you know what, while we're here, let's have a quick talk about the writing in general. Before this, I had played Avowed. I had replayed Warcraft 3. I was in the middle of Book 3 of the Temeraire series, and I had just put down Book 4 of the Eli Monpress series, and was halfway through The Raven's Scholar. Just some fancy books there. I love fantasy media. I like to keep it light. I hate grimderp, gritty crap. I'm a big believer that books should be read as if they are translations. So if a character in a book would be a hip, cool guy, but it's a medieval time, then a certain amount of artistic liberty to translate hip, cool guy needs to be done to show the audience they're hip and cool. I don't want my fantasy to be written in period-appropriate ye olde English of the era. I suspect they are all speaking a language that isn't English, so we translate it, right? It's a translation both of individual words, sentence structure, and overall meaning. Convey the feeling over using the correct verbiage. I'm not a fantasy snob, is what I'm saying. I like it light, easy breezy. I think grimdark has been a blight on the fantasy landscape for far too long. With that said, holy shit, some of these characters talk like Gen Z bullshit, and it's fucking stupid. I have never been so quickly pulled out of a universe by a few poor word choices. Beyond talking like Gen Z, and beyond seeming like they're a writer's self-insert version of a cool person that everybody loves, but anyone like that in person would actually be insufferable, some of the companions are just super annoying. These are two separate issues, to be clear. Some of the characters are poorly written for fantasy, but would be fine in another setting. Some of them are intensely annoying as a character, and I would hate in all settings, aka Balara. But hey, biases, right? For some people, Balara is their favourite character. Also a limited time dialogue scene with Lucanus. These come up pretty regularly with the companions, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. This particular dialogue is only available for a limited time, right? Now, I have no idea how long that time is because whenever one turned up, I just immediately tapped that. Honestly, what kind of psycho would play a Dragon Age game and skip dialogue? They might expire after you leave the zone once, or they might expire after a certain event is triggered or a mission completed. I don't know. In this conversation, they go on about coffee lots because, again, the crows are just Italians without any further world building or even a minor twist added to that. Lucanus confirms he wants to work with us and that he was caught because Zara knew he was coming. We could romance Lucanus now, but I choose not to. Only mages can be possessed by demons, but Lucanus confirms that he has zero magical talent, so this really is just some super freaky experiment Zara was doing here. Does it open a whole load of ramifications that are not explored at all? Yes, it does. Thanks for noticing. The Caretaker has a workbench that you upgrade by finding random pickups in the world. You can upgrade your gear and eventually you'll be able to enchant it. At this point in the game, I didn't understand the loot system as mentioned or how scarce resources were, so I just ignored the upgrade system for now. Flipping back to me being able to romance Lucanus, I want to really quickly touch on this. I saw it said somewhere else that in this Dragon Age, all the characters are player sexual. You can bang them all, whereas in past Dragon Ages, each character had their own sexuality, so if you rolled a male, you'd be locked out of some romances. True, but not the point. I wanted to let you know my mindset at this point in the game. I'm like 10 hours in or something, and I don't like any character yet. None of them are getting me bricked up physically, and none are yet interesting me mentally. And I think this is a key issue. Going forwards, I will end up liking some of these characters, if not basically all. But at the time, we need to engage physically so that we can build up enough hidden romance points to do the romance stuff. I wasn't interested in them. I do think that this game is assuming it doesn't need to create instantly likable characters because it expects you to be a horny teenager that wants to bang anything that moves. And I do bring that energy, but all of their characters are amiss for me on first impressions. I guess in my old age, I needed the characters to romance me before I'd romance them. How the turntables. Or just none of their tits were big enough. Going back through the crossroads, I don't really know which characters I want and how it feels to play with the different ones, so I just go with Nev and Harding again. We fight our way through magical constructs and end up at the mirror to go back to Arlathan instead of Minrathous, totally by accident. I haven't really gotten the grasp of fast travel or map exploration yet, so with new quests on the map, I get those done, which involves fighting, exploring, and puzzling. Getting my first companion quest with Harding done. We're helping her understand her new rock powers. I encourage her to think about it as a gift because surely saying anything else in this situation would just be weird, right? Oh, also, dwarves can't do magic. They can't be mages, etc., as mentioned, so this is a literal first for dwarven kind as far as we're aware. We find and help some veil jumpers using her new powers, and that's nice for them, I guess. I find some spirits to put them to rest, and on the way also charge a large artifact power crystal, which involves pointing beam weapons at power points or something. This is very standard puzzling, like Dragon Age puzzle scenario stuff here. It's not really a puzzle, it's not like a riddle. You can't fail these, you know? The spirit wants to do a ceremony, which we do, and for some reason I have to say a few words. But of course I do. I'm the main character, and God forbid the world doesn't revolve around me. Heaven forbid we do a traditional hero story and start at nothing and have to build our way up to being respected. No, let's just start at we are a literal god. In fairness, we've seen so many game reviews complaining about not being able to do things themselves and having other characters do the cool thing that I understand why devs don't do this. So screw all game reviewers who demand they be a Mary Sue. Hitting level 10, I put my points into some things in the skill tree, but I really don't know where I'm going with it at this point. I'll talk more about the build I ended up going with when I actually figure it out in the game, way closer to the end. Until then, I was just messing around, really. Doing this makes me forget that I was supposed to be going to Minrathous, and so when I pick my next quest, I go back to Treviso. The heads of the crows tell us that they think us wanting to kill the gods and them wanting Treviso free are linked. The Arntarm commander, Kithlord Butcher Duthrata, can't just be killed because they think he had help taking the city. So there's a traitor that presumably eventually we need to uncover. This first quest on the road to freeing Treviso from Arntarm rule is focused on finding out more about this odd figure, the Butcher. On the way to finding the scouts, I run around the market. Note that at this point I don't understand the loot system, point that out again, for this game, so don't know what to buy. We find one of the scouts killed and free the other one. We learn that the Butcher is making a Gamek, a poison that helps him mind control people. This comes up a lot. On the way back, I stumble across my first blighted cyst, which at the time, I don't know what this is. What the fuck is that? In the crossroads, there are locked blight gates which to open and unlock that area, you need the soul of a blight champion. These are the blight champions. There's a half dozen or so in the game. This one is level 25, which I hadn't noticed that enemies have set levels in the game yet, and I'm level 9. This guy also has a blight shield, which I don't know, and also don't know which type of attack is needed to break their shield. It's a heavy attack, by the way. None of this clicks, and so I spent the next 34 minutes fighting this boss. The first attempt actually lasts 11 minutes and was also my best attempt, very strangely. I'm not dealing much damage to him, am I, really? Yep, fair play. Can't argue with that. What? Fuck off, mate. Giving up on this weird fight, I continue with the quest and find the Kamek Master, who after that Blight Champion boss, I really quickly down. We destroy the poison, and then we hand in the quest. Governor Evenchi is telling us how we have made things worse by angering the Butcher. Now, I'm not going to keep you in suspense, because it's very obvious. Evenchi is the traitor, and about 45 hours, I kill him to free Treviso. If one is paying attention, this is so obvious. And like the fact that there isn't a twist to Evenchi or this whole quest line here about freeing Treviso is bizarre because it's signaled so blatantly obviously right from this first quest. The fact there wasn't a twist was in itself a twist with this level of slap in the face writing. Back to the crossroads, and the mirror to Minrathous is right next to Treviso, luckily. Minrathous, specifically Docktown, is where our intro opening was, if you recall. The main city of the north and where the Shadow Dragon faction resides. And despite it being a shadowy organisation, Nev immediately introduces us to its leader, the Viper. I can't lie, I now wish I had gone Shadow Dragons as my background. This guy looks cool AF, as foretold. They want us to find some red lyrium relics they heard were being smuggled into the city. Cool. Okay, he goes for the... God damn it, I'm so bad at this game. We break into a temple, kill some demons, talk to some spirits, kill some Venatori cultists, talk to a Templar who wants to stop illegal magic, unlike in the south of the country, where they just want to kill all mages, basically. And it turns out that some guy was going to buy this relic, and they're a Venatori, so working for the evil gods, of course. We do a demon boss fight, and then at the end we learn the organisation doing the smuggling are called the Thread Crime Syndicate, the Threads. Some politician and a knight commander let them both off with no repercussions, because why not? A Varric cartoon alludes to Nev's past, coming back to get her. End of the mission takes us back to the lighthouse, and Balara is talking about the Veil Jumpers needing help. Harding wants to go to the Deep Road to talk about being a dwarf. Lucanus wants to get onto his Zara mission, and Nev wants us to return to Docktown. Well, I can meet you in Dicktown, am I right? Basically, all of the companions have sent us on the start to their specific companion chains. Cool, love it. I use the mirror to go to the next quest because I have yet to figure out how good and comprehensive the fast travel feature in this game is. And it is really good, to be clear. But luckily, the menu from the mirror even offers taking you straight to the next quest instead of always having to run through the crossroads. But honestly, the load time from the fast travel is brilliant. I go with the Lucanus companion mission and we walk through the Treviso market and then finish in his favourite coffee house where we just talk about coffee. His cousin tells him that Zara has left the city, but Lucanus says that no, she's still in the city. Jumping over to Balara's companion mission, and I've turned on the colorblind protanopia filter. And just in case you're wondering, it looks crazy to my eyes too, not just yours, don't worry. Balara wants our help fixing some ancient artifacts and hints there's a reason to be so cautious, even when there's only been a single accident ever. It's clear it's some tragic backstory she's hiding for now, and I still can't stand her, to be clear. God, I don't like this person. Yep, fair play. Yep. Fucking ridiculous. At this point, we do another side quest here, but I'm not going to discuss every side quest. There's so many. They are good, though. Like, really nice, but we don't need to cover all of them. We killed some stuff. It changes nothing. It's all good. From now on, I'm only going to mention the main story and the companion quests. Balara and Nev are talking, and Balara is enamored with just how famous Nev is. apparently, and is totally fangirling, which, is fine. I hate Ballara, but it's okay to fangirl. Back at Treviso, Lucanus wants more details about how it all happened, how they lost their grandmother. His cousin tells him to move on and not dwell, a totally normal thing to say. Everyone agrees the cousin is up to something, though, which I like. I like that they immediately call out dumb, clearly wrong behaviour. And I'm glad they've done that when it's so obvious. And just like with the evil politician guy, yes, again, the cousin did do it. This is a double, no-twist, obvious villain situation. Honestly, mad writing decisions on these two picks, but fine, whatever. We're back with Nev and the Shadow Dragons, and on the way to the tunnels, which have been infested by Darkspawn, but are used to free slaves, by the way, we stumble across this room, which I really feel means something and probably hints towards something, but I don't know what, and it never comes up again, sadly. In the tunnels, we find the Venatori working alongside the Darkspawn, which tells us that the Venatori are working for the gods, as we obviously know, but it's nice to have confirmation, and the Blight is controlled by the gods. We need more info, so head to a warehouse the other side of town and kill more Venatori. We also learn the Viper's real name is Asher. Inside the warehouse, we stop a ritual and kill a Darkspawn. I also just now found out that the name for these larger Darkspawn is a Hurlock. Very cool name, I like it. We find that the Darkspawn were put into that tunnel specifically to root out the Shadow Dragons. The Venatori have members in government, but so do the Shadow Dragons. Down to a tavern called the Cobbled Swan to meet the first Warden, leader of the Grey Wardens. All these other factions we have no real reason to know much about, but the Grey Wardens, of course due to legacy games, feature just as heavily as the Blight throughout the Dragon Age games, is always a constant thing. They are avowed protectors of the people. Specifically to destroy the Blight and to kill an archdemon, you must have a Grey Warden strike the final blow upon it, and it will kill the Grey Warden along with the archdemon. Surely at some point I have to have the "but you have heard of me" line. He's annoyed at us because we unleashed the Blight, which is fair. He's not wrong. We explained the evil gods thing, and he's not impressed and says that we need to be imprisoned at the Grey Warden Fortress in Weishaupt. Dorian comes in and says that the Grey Wardens have messed up and been evil in the past. And the Knight Commander concedes and leaves, and then Dorian said he was bluffing. He didn't know that, which is so dumb. I don't even know what to say. This doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense. He didn't bluff. He accused him of a specific... Okay, it's fine. Pointing out a specific event that he referenced, an exact date and name, isn't a bluff. That's just a fact. You can't bluff with specifics and then get the response that it doesn't matter. So that was dumb. A Varric cartoon explains that the veil is all that stood between the mortal world and a world of blighted darkness, and that the gods just need time to create their own red lyrium dagger. Yes, the Varric cartoons are covering things that we already know, but you know that so many people skip dialogue and fast forward through things. I actually like these little recaps. You could quite happily play the game only listening to these cartoon catch-ups, and you still basically know everything that's going on, which is a really good way of doing it. They're covering their bases. Back in the lighthouse, and Ballara and Nev have a chat about Ballara finding Nev's journal, and Nev is now surrounded by whips constantly, which I think probably means something, but we still don't know what yet. And again, I don't remember this ever being resolved, but maybe it does. God, they're so in love with their writing for Ballara. She's the worst part of this game so far. Our main quest is now to talk to Varric, and he notices that we're holding on to the lyrium dagger and that it's dangerous. Harding says she knows some Grey Wardens, and Varric says that Harding glows now. What's up with that? Fair question. And I'm confused because she isn't glowing for me, so what does that mean? Back on companion quest, and it's Nev in Docktown. This is one of those quests where we just walk around, as all of the companions have as their first quests. So we buy some newspapers, as that's how detective investigation works, I suppose. And then a member of the Threads gang is a contact for her, which Rook is for some reason surprised by. But, I mean, I guess Rook knows more than we do about the interpolitics of smuggling gangs. We then get a moment between Nev and a fish seller trying to give her food for free, but she insists on paying to show she's liked by the locals. And yes, she dabbles in crime, but she does it for the right reasons, so that's fine. We then have a chat, and basically it's just showing that Nev is a detective noir-style character, working in a broken town that's corrupt, but the people are good. And that's kind of her character archetype in full. No need to know anything more about Nev. While I'm in Minrathous, I do some side quests that are really boring about a spirit, but really it just means walking and then killing a demon and then walking again. I then find the local Blight champion, Coon the Spark Wielder, and manage to take him out very legitimately, and it's a really fun, good fight. All of the champions are just hyped up ogres, and once you've figured out how to fight them, they're all basically the same. But it's still a solid 7 minutes of fighting, which is pretty crazy to stay locked in for that long. While messing around at the crossroads, I stumble across the first of Solus's regret dream quests. I think there's 3 of them in the game, maybe there's 4, but it's a fun little way of telling the story of Solas during his rebellion. In this first one, we are a spirit of some sort, and inside the enemy fortress that we're assaulting is a relic that can imprison the evil gods. So Solas is using these spirits from the Fade to fight the better enemy army. Turns out that the role in his dream we played, the spirit, was just a distraction, and so all of the spirits were killed so that the strike force could steal the relic, because this fortress was impenetrable, but the evil gods had to believe Solus had committed all of his forces. To clarify, a demon and a spirit are totally different things if you're getting confused there. Finishing our crossroads run, we get to the High Anderfels with Harding on the road to find the Grey Wardens. If you recall, that was the next main quest. Harding warns them that the gods are changing the Blight and the Darkspawn too. Now these 2 Grey Wardens aren't the most popular, so we need to do more than just convince them, and they suggest talking to Davrin, a monster hunter among monster hunters. Davrin finds us along with his griffin, Asan, and says we smell like Darkspawn, to which we point out that his tent has been covered in the Blight, and he just kind of laughs it off, which I don't think is really the right response, but fine, I'm clearly missing something here. We mow down some Darkspawn on the way to find the Griffin Trainer Grey Wardens, as it turns out that Davrin is just the Griffin Protector Grey Warden. The trainers turn out to be super dead though. With his dying breath, one of the trainers reminds Davrin to be gentle on the Griffins. Turns out something called the Gloom Howler is stalking Grey Wardens, and Davrin is hunting it as it has some sort of power over Darkspawn, which didn't seem odd to me, but maybe it is, I don't know. We get our first sighting of the Gloom Howler as fog whips around it, super atmospheric and cool. She runs away, and instead we have to take out a frenzied ogre, which I do. This is one of the few fights where I play around with detonations, but they really don't seem to be super great to me, and so in the future I will be going exclusively with healbot companions, which means caster companions only. The melee companions tank more damage and do get more aggro from enemies, but they don't have a heal, while the caster companions get almost completely ignored by enemies but have a heal every 30 seconds, so that's better. If you stagger that, it's a heal every 15 seconds, which is pretty solid. The Gloom Howler steals 13 griffins. There are only 14 left alive in the entire world, as far as we know, so this isn't a good thing, I'll give it that. Griffins are secret, by the way. I didn't know that, but it gets told to us here. And Davrin joins us as our 5th companion. As we return, all the companions have rushed out to meet us in the Fade to tell us that a blighted dragon is attacking Minrathous and Treviso at the same time. Nev and Lucanus put forward their points as to which needs help the most, and then we have to decide where to go. This is one of the biggest decision points in the game. Help Minrathous and stop a Venatori coup, or help Treviso and stop the resultant civilian fallout from a poisoned water supply. This was a really tough choice, and I spent most of my time wondering why Treviso needed any help, because they have an entire invasion force of Arntarm there to fight off the blighted dragon. What more could I do? Looking back on it, knowing what I know now, it turns out the Arntarm are working with the old gods, so this line of reasoning was completely wrong. But in my defense, at this point in the story, there was no way for me to know the Arntarm were connected to the old gods. As far as I was aware, they were a totally separate entity. Regardless of this, as a good guy rook, stopping civilian poisoning has to be higher up the tier list on bad stuff than Venatori stepping into a power vacuum and taking charge politically. So I choose to help Treviso. Personal point, I don't like Treviso or the Crows at all, really. I think Minrathous is much cooler. But civilian water poisoning is really undefensible when compared to stopping some bad guys becoming politicians. Insert joke about all politicians being bad guys anyway here, but it's a fantasy world, so maybe that's the true fantasy. Honest politicians. Ooh, wow, Andy, what a scathing political take. Fucking idiot. So we see the dragon swooping around, which is obviously super cool. And then from some random Arm soldier chats, we find out that the Arm are on the dragon's side and not against it, which would have been nice to know before making our decision, as mentioned. We then get our first real meeting of Gillenane, one of the two evil gods we unleashed 14 hours ago in this game, and get our first dragon fight against Corius the Ice Talon, which really is a baby dragon fight as it flies away after only taking a fifth of its health bar in damage, which honestly makes sense because this is one of the few big boss fights that is absolutely mandatory in the game. Most big challenging fights come outside of the main questline. Now, dragons are pretty simple. They will spit at you, kick you, charge at you, and body slam the ground. They have weak spots that alternate from front legs to back legs to head, and when you stagger them, they fall over and their belly becomes a weak spot for you to hit as well. With Treviso save because of my skill in beating off dragons, I check in with Nev at Blighted Minrathus. Not a good sign and totally are bad. Nev is not super happy with us. In fact, everyone is pretty annoyed at me. And I'm like, why? I saved Treviso. The Shadow Dragons, anyway, beat off their dragon, but in doing so, their leader took a hit and is now blighted. We get quickly dismissed by Nev, and she will be out of the story and our party for a time. At this point, I ding level 19, with 50 being the max level as far as I'm aware. Ultimately, this choice has made me fight a dragon and save a city. Very cool. But the negatives always outweigh the positives. I feel like instead of saving Treviso, I just let Minrathus get destroyed. And instead of Lucanus liking me more, Nev just hates me in an unrecoverable way. The problem I always find with making these decisions is that I don't know the outcomes, obviously, and that can be rather frustrating, and I typically find myself wanting to check Reddit for what the repercussions are before making such obviously big decisions. I didn't though, I just raw dogged this one. And yeah, I feel punished for the bad thing, but not rewarded for the good thing I did. But this is pretty cool, and I like that it's such a big thing that I got to decide. More of this scale would be good. I think, on reflection, this was kind of the largest single decision in the game, and it also is the perfect vertical slice of the game. Going forwards, I simply expect more of what I had in the first 14 hours. I know all of the mechanics the game has to offer now, and if you're someone without enough time to dedicate to finishing the whole game, this is a perfect stopping point. A really nice, little 14-hour RPG. So we then go back to Solus. We are, for some reason, recapping Solus on everything we've learned. I do not know why we think that telling the god of deceit everything is needed, but we're doing it, so there you go. He says it makes sense that the Antarm and the Venatori have fallen in line as they both want more power and will follow whoever gives it to them. The dragons being controlled were a shock to him, and seems aware that the blight can be used to control things, which makes total sense from the outside, but I accept that in the story this isn't how blight is used or a thing that it does, so the characters are having to get used to the idea. Solas posits that this is the end goal for the gods. Blighted slavery for the entire world. We flip it on him and get sarcastic, saying we should all have been free of the blight for when his demons ripped us apart. Solus says the veil is a wound he cut into the Fade in a moment of desperation, and so his mission is to fix his own mistake. He is called the Dreadwolf for what he's done, and a lot of what he's done is trying to fix his first mistake, it does appear. With that little spat taken care of, he suggests that to fight dragons and darkspawn, we find ourselves a dragon hunter and Grey Wardens. That conversation done, we soft cut to our team around the fire saying, so, Solus thinks we need a dragon hunter and a Fade expert, which is odd because he did not mention a Fade expert at all, don't know where that came from. Davrin, being a Grey Warden, highlights that we're working with a demon assassin and taking advice from the god that tried to tear down the veil, and honestly, valid. Yeah, what are we doing here? A quick run around of the companions, and Lucanus likes coffee. Great characterization from the writers there again. Superb, he's Italian, I get it, thanks. Davrin is concerned about his change of role from Griffin Protector to Griffin Trainer, and he gives us some background on Griffins and Grey Wardens. Apparently, they used to work together as aerial cavalry when a blight got going on in the world, you know? But then the Griffins went extinct, apart from this hidden cache of eggs that Asan is from. Valara has contacted the Fade expert. I love this ghost guy here. He's called Vorgoth, and he's top-notch comedy. He's one of the leaders of the Morn Watchers in the Necropolis, and where we find our Fade expert. But he is amazing. Possibly, he's the second best character in the game. Let's go Bang Harding. Not like that. Like bang as in talk. It's just a generic word. It doesn't mean anything. Harding says the Lords of Fortune have a dragon hunter we can borrow called Tarsh. That is the first mention of the Coon in... Sorry, the Coon. Don't want to mispronounce that one, do you? Over to the Ravane coast to find this dragon hunter and one of our main factions, the Lords of Fortune, and Tarsh gets a fighting intro scene which is definitely flashier than any of the other companions got. They all get a talking scene normally. We join Tarsh on their dragon hunt. They're very curt and to the point and blunt, and it's actually a really refreshing change to the mouthy, annoyance-riddled stain that is Valara. Minor aside about Tarsh that is only minor, as I'll do the companion section properly when I start actually pumping out their companion quests. But this opening ingratiated me to them immediately, and I had very high hopes that all issues here were just lame-ass right-wing grifters moaning, so this was actually a great start. I will spoil you, it does go downhill from this start. It isn't as good as it could be, as I think the writers felt the only way a character in this world could give one-word answers is if they're Marvel quipping and talking like a modern character, in what I can only really call super immersion-breaking decisions, and pretty cringy in places. But I still end up quite liking Tarsh overall, just so you know. Oh?
On time ahead. Be ready. They go hard.
They go hard. Okay, I'm starting to see the
Watch
issue.
yourself. Eat shit. This is not your land. Sure, I wear a lot of stuff. You don't get to tell me who I am.
We get to a big open arena and kill some deep stalkers, which will be our bait to lure the dragon, which we're not killing, it turns out, just sleeping. So the Lords of Fortune can loot its lair safely, by the way, I guess. We get a nice flyby of the dragon. Inside the fort, there's a bunch of Arntarm, which we brutally murder, no big deal there, of course. And it looks like the Arntarm are going to kill the now passed out dragon, so we interrupt them and claim the kill by the rights of the Coon or something, but it turns out Tarsh breathes fire like a dragon. So that's a thing. I guess we'll talk about that later, probably. It certainly raises a few questions and eyebrows from everybody, including me. Then we savagely dismember all of the Arntarm. And yes, it was only at this point that I figured out the Arntarm were the Kunari. So yeah, like 20 hours in. Who knew? Legit didn't know until now, as they're always wearing masks, so I actually hadn't seen their horns and faces before. We free the dragon and get a Varric cartoon saying that the Arntarm will take word of a fire-breathing Kunari back to their leader, the Dragon King. The Lords of Fortune leader, Isabella, congratulates us, and we found an ancient Kunari tablet that Tarsh's mother seems pretty hyped for. She then scolds Tarsh for showing off her flame breath and allowing the Arntarm to get away, knowing it will be reported back. There's a slight spat between Tarsh and Mother, as it turns out Tarsh didn't know the plan had been to have her work with Rook and the team, and despite it perfectly aligning with Tarsh's goals, they're still pretty miffed about it. Back at the lighthouse, and Harding says some things that make me realise that she was actually a character in the previous game. Yeah, I didn't know that. I googled it. Not a playable one, but she was there as a scout that briefed you in lots of missions, it turns out. Again, I did not do a replay of Inquisition before Veilguard, and I completely forgot this. If I ever knew, I can't remember. It was like a decade ago, guys. It was a long time. And this was a unplayable character. I go on Tarsh's first companion quest, which is always a chilled walk around quest, and explains that the fire thing isn't magic, and Kunari used to be closer to dragons, so it's something in their blood. Aside from that, we hear how Tarsh's mother smuggled them out of Coon when they were a baby, because all fire breathers get turned into religious zealot warriors, and so Tarsh would have been taken away from the mum. Aside from that, Tarsh is mainly complaining that they don't know who they are, as their childhood has been a mix of Ravanian and Coon. We meet the mother, who says that Tarsh has always acted more like a man than a woman. Okay, Alrighty. Cool. Back at the lighthouse, Davrin has gotten into whittling. He whittles his enemies. He also wants to write his own monster hunting book that is more real and gritty instead of the sanitized and anatomical maid-written books. Weird, but alright, you do you, mate. At this point, I smash out some side quests in Treviso and Minrathous, something about Bigaroo, explosives, and blight taking hold in catacombs. Every quest has an identical game loop. Get the quest, travel to the quest marker. The quest marker makes you run to another quest marker where there will be a fight. Run to another quest marker where there will be a puzzle using the flavour of the zone you're in, whether that be arcane rocks and beams, Tevinter crystals, or blight boils, and then you get a mini-boss. Finish up by returning to the quest giver. That is literally every quest in the game. As I said, if you don't like the combat, this game will not work for you. In side quests, the fast travel still works, but in companion and main missions, the fast travel gets turned off. That's it. That's every quest. Yes, it is repetitive. Yes, I think it is probably bad game design, but I still liked the game, so I guess I'm not complaining too much. I'm just noting it and why I'm not really discussing the side quests with you. Although, in fairness, the game is ultimately about being a story, and some people may view this game as the mechanics and the gameplay loop, etc., as being the side content. And they're like, no, I want to know about the world. The side quests are more important to me than the combat. But anyway, back to Davrin's companion quest, and we need to help him bond with Asan, and finding his favourite food is what we're doing. That turns out to be gingerwort truffles. We searched near Elvish ruins for them, and Davrin tells us how he became a Grey Warden, which is honestly really uninspiring. He felt like he didn't fit in with elves, who were so focused on the past, but he looked to the future. Once again, he complains that he doesn't know how to raise a griffin. There's a giant elven ruin puzzle here, although as always calling it a puzzle is a stretch. You just point 3 beams at the only thing they can be pointed at, and then it unlocks and you have to beat a Guardian of Secrets. I call it out only because it's one of the few times I actually died. I just couldn't get his parrying sequence down, so eventually, to beat him, I just always dodged everything and just did it slowly. I also loot the Iron Veil, my first unique item in the game, and now seems like a pretty good time to discuss the loot system. There's gear, materials, and vendor trash. As you start any game, you never know how their system works. I've grown up on World of Warcraft, so I always ignore vendors, right, assuming that drops are better. But of course, there are many games where that just isn't the case. And in hindsight, Warcraft is the RPG equivalent of a looter shooter. You have greens and blues thrown at you constantly, and you get to sift through the unicorn blood to find the stuff that you really want. It's Borderlands. Veilguard is the absolute complete opposite. Enemies respawn throughout the game as you'd expect, and they drop a very small amount of gold and resources, right? That's it. Even in the final levels of the game, when I'm rolling around with 50,000 gold, my reward for exploration off to side paths is a chest with like 9 gold. What? This was quite legitimately frustrating. The designers clearly knew that they needed to put a chest and a reward for exploring down every path, and they did do this. Well done you for exploring, that's good. Well done player, standard design practice. But not once were these rewards actually good. Except for when they were absolutely mandatory, and then locked off if you didn't check it. Unlike Tarsh, these rewards were pretty fucking binary. Am I finding 6 gold, or am I finding a legendary weapon? And of course, 90% of the time, the answer was a gold amount I genuinely felt was insulting my time and effort and lowered my view of the game. But I can't stop, because games like this are supposed to be about exploring and finding cool stuff in fantastical worlds, and I damn sure didn't want to miss out on some fire AF, as foretold, gear. So let's talk gear, because the materials, crafting, gold and stuff is standard, if in low amounts. Boring amounts is the way to think of it. Uninteresting. Gear doesn't have random stats. There is no longbow of the eagle or great sword of the bear. Everything is a unique item. But more than that, everything is a unique item that has a specific location it can be found. You will never get a random drop from an enemy. It all comes from chests or vendors. Also, the rarity system we all know of common, uncommon, rare, etc. exists in name only, but is nothing to do with what you expect from other games. All gear levels up. That tag is not a rarity tag indicating a random allocation of stats. It's a power level. Every time you find that item, the item levels up. So the first time you find the longbow of poison or whatever, it will be a grey common weapon. The next time you find it, it will upgrade to become a green uncommon weapon, unlocking the next of its abilities. So to fully upgrade your weapon, you need to find it 4 times from its various locations throughout the game. This means that if you miss a weapon location, it can quite easily be locked out from unlocking its final legendary effect. If you miss a weapon every time throughout the game, which is totally possible if you aren't being obsessive, then it will still be a common grey item when you find it from the final endgame vendor. You can also upgrade and enchant your weapons to power them up, but that's not the loot system and it just costs resources and the numbers go up a bit, so not super interesting if I'm honest. I am very conflicted with this system due to how punishing it is to anyone not being super thorough. There are many areas in quests that you cannot return to that have gear in. The system demands exploration, which is fine and good, but then also punishes exploration by having it be really, really boring 90% of the time. Unique gear also exists. Same thing, you find it in specific locations throughout the world, but it can't be leveled up. At the Grand Necropolis, we find another side of Dragon Age's magic and the Fade and such, and that's the spirits instead of the demons. The faction called the Morn Watchers and our guide to the Fade, Emmerich. Before he can answer our questions about the Fade, he needs help with some chores, which shockingly leads to a mini-boss fight, and then leads to us running around the entire necropolis on a series of fights and puzzles. Entering the big final fight of Emmerich's introduction, I reach one of the few bugs in the game, and I'm having a lot of computer stutter here for some reason, but I just managed to survive the 3-minute wave defense. Reloading the game fixed it. I've had the same bug twice in the entire 50 hours of gaming. That's pretty good, I can't lie. We catch Emmerich up on the whole evil gods thing, and then my favourite character appears, Manfred. Also, more Vorgoth, the sassy, apparently not evil monotone lich. Having recruited Emmerich, we get a Varric cartoon that talks about how the Venatori, which we just fought lots of on the intro quest there, had stolen and passed on something called the Gloaming Lantern. Then, around the table in the lighthouse, we're ticking off the issues and the assets we have to deal with them, which is really just making up for the fact that for the player, it could be days between playthroughs, so, a little recap is a good idea. But that is exactly what this video is, so I won't recap their recap. But Nev does return. For you, she was probably gone for like 10 minutes max. For my gameplay, she was gone for about 6 hours or so. Nev knows that we made an impossible choice, so she doesn't hate us, but she isn't happy. After the round table, I have another chat with Varric, and the conversation has moved on a bit from me saying he should be the leader, more onto him just kind of lamenting that leadership is hard alongside me. I do feel like they're relying quite heavily on the nostalgia of Varric from the previous game, which again, I did not replay and I do not care about Varric, but whatever, fine. We get a pop-up confirming that Nev has been hardened due to our decisions. Damage abilities are increased, but now won't use support abilities and any relationship progress is slowed. I like that it gets called out, and I like that her abilities actually change. Very cool. I would love to see more of this in the game, having both positive and negative effects on their mechanics based on our decisions. That is awesome. I want more of that. More of that, please. Thank you. But not just if you do the good thing, you get positives, and if you do the bad thing, you get negatives. No, make every decision, good or positive, have both a plus and a minus. That would be really cool. Allow me to build my companions to be like a mage, and then I can make them a defensive mage or a healer or a support or an offensive mage based on the decisions I make. Kind of, modifying their stats and the spells they can use. That would be amazing. Does that game exist? Guys, genuine question. Does that game exist? I want to play that. Anyway, moving on from my fanfic game there, Davrin tells us that griffins are natural enemies of Darkspawn apparently, and the name Asan means arrow. Davrin feels that although he's a big, gruff fighter man, and that's all he knows, maybe there's a better path out there for griffins. I guess griffins don't have to be a big, gruff fighter man. Emmerich is showing off his book collection to Balara, and his main concern, as a shut-in of a necropolis for the entirety of his life, is that others have been giving him odd looks about all the skulls and death and stuff, and he hopes that won't be a problem. That's all Emmerich really says as his first one-on-one chat, and that means that finally, 21 hours into the game, almost halfway through it, we have our entire team assembled. I have to say, all in all, that was quite a slow burn assembling the whole team. I was hoping to do a quick run through of the game, only hitting the absolute musts, like, main and companion quests only, leaving everything else alone, and to only get my full team at 21 hours is quite concerning, especially when I was getting bored at this point. In fact, you know what? Let's have a quick aside to tell you my impressions of the game after 20 hours. And I think a 20-hour game is pretty good for me. Spot on. And of course, you already know that I like this game. I'm editing 56 hours of my playthrough because I think it's worth it. But at this point, I was getting bored. And not just like on one front. Everything was boring me and I wanted it to end. I still hadn't understood how exactly the loot system worked, so I was wondering why all the loot was really boring. So wasn't loving that, and at this point I was doing a completely unguided and unresearched first playthrough, right? I felt the combat was thoroughly mid. I didn't hate it, of course, but it didn't inspire me. So yeah, at this point in the game, I just wanted it to end. I go on a bunch of quests for the leaders of the Moorwatch, which I will skip because, as we all know, you just fast travel to the nearest spot and fight a mini-boss. So it's off to the Hosberg Wetlands, which is the Grey Warden zone, and we link up with the married couple, Grey Wardens again. The Grey Wardens know a lot about the Blight and Darkspawn and such, and confirm that the Blight is acting weird and growing much faster than it should. One of these wardens says that he can hear the Blight having a different song beneath its usual one because the Grey Wardens can sense this stuff, I guess. The first warden needs convincing, so they need proof. So that's us. We're collecting Blight samples. As I was running around, I did some other quests because they were there. And who doesn't love a good quest hub? It's like crack to me. Back at the Grey Warden couple and the first warden turns up, and honestly good, because this line was seeming really boring and was going over stuff we already knew, and hopefully an actual antagonist can spice things up. This guy's an absolute knob, but everyone else just working together against some silly faceless evil is actually pretty boring. In this, the first warden says that we are just meddling and don't know what we're doing, and there is no change to the Blight. The archdemons control it, and if an archdemon has been raised, the Grey Wardens would know and do what needs to be done. He agrees the Blight has increased, but the Blight is slow on its own and everything is in accordance with expectations, and he orders the Grey Wardens to Weishaupt, the Grey Warden fortress.
Talks with him ever pleasant?
We talked about the rain once. It was neutral.
That's funny. I like that. Varric cartoon explaining something that I hadn't really realised at this point, but Gillenane is referred to as the god of monsters, and sure enough, as we go on, that does turn out to be true, but I think what they're meaning here is that she's the one changing the Blight and making it more aggressive and faster. More importantly, the Blight army isn't just changing, it's done. At this point, it is actually complete, and the evil gods are ready. This felt a bit weird because we just discovered the Blight is changing. Now to be told the army is complete feels a bit disconnected, but fine. Back at the lighthouse, Emmerich and Harding are talking about cremation, and Emmerich doesn't like that. With cremation, there wouldn't be a body for Manfred, who we learn is a wisp of curiosity that is learning and growing. He was just a wisp that wouldn't leave Emmerich's side. Lara has a quest, and oh, who the fuck is this? Lara is trying to get the archive spirit to answer questions, but doesn't know how. Brooke tells her to talk to it like a lesser, and sure enough, demanding answers works. Interestingly, Balara says that our two evil gods, Elganan and Gillenane, were considered the good gods, the ones you could pray to. The bad gods are just called the forgotten ones. So honestly, quite why there isn't like this whole side quest or like main quest of how the elves as a people are taking the fact that their gods are evil, that would set you back a few generations, if I'm honest. Anyway, Nev tells us she's too busy to talk. Part of your relationship setback here, I assume. Tash and Nev are now talking about fashion, and Tash says that her mother said she acts more like a man than a woman, which she did say, so that's fair. She says it feels right when she thinks of herself as a man. Nev says she has friends in Minrathous who feel the same way, and they can talk to Tash. Davrin drops some Grey Warden lore about how a lot of them are actually really bad people, because an alternative to your punishment, for making a crime, doing a crime is the right word there, is taking the Grey Warden test. He understands why the First Warden needs to be as disciplined as he is. And although Davrin has issues with the Grey Wardens and who the Grey Wardens were before they take their vow, now they really do save lives. Again, it's a pretty interesting concept of, can you redeem yourself after whatever you've done? I find out you can play rock, paper, scissors with Manfred, and that's fun. I tried beating him 3 times in a row, but there was no achievement, so clearly that is bugged. There definitely should be something for doing this. As we try to leave, Lucanus is at the mirror arguing with Tash and Harding. He wakes up and it turns out Spite was trying to run away, and Lucanus likes coffee, not because he's Italian, well, probably that, but because it helps him to stay awake, because Spite can take control much easier when Lucanus is asleep. Brooke says we need to tell Spite he's endangering Lucanus, and I'm left wondering why the F, buddy? Brooke thinks a demon would care. Like, huh? He's a demon. It's in the name. We then go on Emmerich's first walk around and chat companion quest. Emmerich has a duty that is walking around a graveyard and doing a rite of remembrance. I do feel like trying to save the world would probably kind of give you a grace period on that, but we're doing it now. Emmerich has a unique ability to talk to the dead, which you might assume is something that is just generically magic and that all of the Morn Watchers can do. But no, not at all. There you go. Weird. We learn that Emmerich's parents died when he was young, and since then his greatest fear, to the point of being an actual phobia, is in fact death. Yep, bit confusing, but that's fine. We go to meet Morrigan in the Cobbled Swan in Minrathous, and it's the Inquisitor from Dragon Age Inquisition. If you wanted to, you can actually import your own Inquisitor, but as mentioned, I haven't done a replay, and I never finished Inquisition, so I just went with the default Inquisitor. Inquisitor Lavalan. Morrigan and her spend a bit of time telling me to not worry about all the people my decisions killed, and focus on who they saved. They want me to keep going after the gods while they keep the south of the continent safe, which apparently is quite the task as it's under siege by Darkspawn, which kind of fills in the blanks from Varric's cartoon saying how they'd already raised an army, which I felt I wasn't seeing. The Inquisitor came here to give me a wolf statuette and imply that canonically, Solas was the companion you romanced in Dragon Age Inquisition. This is a meeting that could have been an email, I can't lie. Morrigan confirms that Elganan and Gillinane are both stronger than Solas, but Solas is more cunning. I only mention this because I always enjoy trying to figure out like power scaling of fictional worlds and characters. It's quite fun. You know, if you're a fucking loser, which I am. Back at the lighthouse, and Davrin lets us know that the First Warden is calling everyone back to Weishaupt. Rumour, not just of a Darkspawn horde moving through the Deep Roads, but that they have an archdemon with them. Which really makes me wonder why the First Warden didn't know about this. Oh, but Davin immediately gives the canon reason, actually. The Blight has changed, so the rules have changed. Good. Okay. Sure. Hey, things are different now. Okay, yeah, that's an answer people are going to be happy with. You know, I say good. That's what everybody likes in their fictional worlds. Inconsistency. We go to have a chat with Solas, and he tells us that we cannot defeat the gods if the Grey Wardens are not on our side, so we need to prepare to do what needs to be done. Solas tells us a story about how one of his opponents was too powerful, so he went on a smear campaign so people feared that opponent less. His mind broke under the ridicule, and frankly, that makes me question a lot of things, but fine, it's literally not important. So we ask, how do we kill archdemons? And Solas says they were never gods of the Tevinter, they were always weapons of the Evanuris. Been a while since I used that word, that's just the elven gods, the Evanuris there, yeah. They also tie their life to the archdemon, and so while an archdemon lives, the god cannot be harmed. Archdemons used to be high dragons, and when bound to the gods became archdemons, which are in some way linked to the Blight. Whether they herald it or just go with it, I'm not sure. I don't think it's really said. And Solus just totally spaced on the archdemons bound to the gods thing. That's right, Solus just never thought archdemons making them immortals would be an issue. Hence why he never locked the archdemons up as well, because apparently that would have been an option. Elganon is the Lord of Tyranny, which is quite a thing to be the Lord of, so that's nice to know. And finally, even with the archdemons killed, you will need the Lyrium dagger to kill the gods. We then get a roundtable talk with the gang, but we have to take Davrin for the Siege of Weishaupt quest, so a little precursor of what's to come for us. Lucanus is our dedicated killer. We give him the dagger so he can take the shot when it's there. The plan is to sneak in, find the Grey Warden couple who like us, and then kill a god. No need to join the defense of the assault or anything like that, or deal with the First Warden. Do it real sneaky like. So obviously we immediately make lots of noise, and then a little girl guides us to where the action is happening because the Darkspawn are already inside the fortress. So we kill our way through a big courtyard, then a bunch of running around the fortress. Then we find the front lines and enter directly into a giant god face looking down at us, and this is apparently Gillenane, the female god who is good at making Darkspawn and creatures, god of monsters or whatever, that kind of stuff. I actually thought that this giant face was the same mask as the Archivist from earlier with Balara, so I was actually really confused at first. Anyway, the god has brought her archdemon with her. And again, just a really good scale of the dragons in this game looks amazing. They really are massive. Gillenane is boasting about her dragon and says that she's returned much of her cunning, which probably has a lot of lore implications, but I don't know what they are. We find our way to the Grey Warden planning room, and they can't get their troops to fall back as it's too loud, so they can't hear the signal horn, and there's a giant dragon trap that is centuries old and never tested. It's cool. The First Warden immediately, with no hesitation, orders our arrest. There's always this weird thing when someone in a fantasy world is totally fine with hordes of what to us are clearly coded as basically demons, and the character is totally into that and understands. But then they're going to say there's no way gods are real. Like, what? Come on, man. That is exactly what the First Warden says here. Fine. Magic, demons, all good. Gods? Nah, mate. Nah. Just a bit weird when it's a single character and everyone around them never had any issues accepting the fact the gods are here. The First Warden wants us to order the entire Legion to charge the Darkspawn, but everyone else is saying we should retreat. It then comes to our decision, and we can either talk it out or punch the dude. Now, I had no idea what the right answer was here, but upon reflection, knocking the First Warden out was very clearly the answer, as he was so aggressive towards me. What cemented this as the right choice was that Balara greatly disapproved of my actions, so that's amazing. The wife from the Grey Warden couple says I get to choose the next move for the Grey Wardens. We decide to run for the 900-year-old archdemon trap that's never been used. We fight our way through the Darkspawn and Blight as Gillenane taunts us, and there are a few different arenas on this run, and we have to solve a Blight puzzle as we're being attacked, and all honestly pretty fun and challenging. Adding the combat to the puzzle mechanics is nice. They do ask what happens when the First Warden wakes up, and Rook just says, I hope he doesn't, which is pretty stone cold, like damn, I am vicious. But also, I don't know what the ramifications are of knocking out the First Warden. I don't know if I could have just talked him round to listening to me, and then did I have to pick fall back to the thing? Could I have knocked the First Warden out and then still charged the enemy? Because that would have been stupid, but fun. Just let me game over myself, I mean, he was such a dick. I really hope it wasn't an option because it would be silly. So I really felt like I picked that option because it was going to end up that way regardless somehow. Like it was clear in the text, We go through lots more arenas of Darkspawn and Blight puzzles. We then get our first double ogre fight. Gotta kill two at once? Oh shit, okay. Which I can imagine would be a really tough fight for some people playing a certain way. But as a rogue, I never just block something. So I always spam dodge all over the place in these boss fights, and 2 bosses just means more dodging. Color blindness does rear its head again, and I genuinely don't know which of their attacks I can or cannot block. Yes, that's right. I'm over 20 hours into this game and still having accessibility issues. Yes, it is a skill issue, really. I could just memorize the attack sets of all the different enemies, I am aware. But we get inside and confirm the plan. Davrin kills the archdemon, because remember, you need a Grey Warden to strike the final blow, and it will kill them along with the archdemon. And then Lucanus goes for the god. Easy peasy, lemon stew. A bit more fighting, and we get to the trap. We bait Gillenane to come and fight us by showing her the lyrium dagger, which, don't forget, they need to pierce the veil to unleash the blight to gain power. Which confuses me now that I think about it, because the blight is here, so I don't understand, but fine. Maybe this gets explained in the future, but I don't think so. Anyway, the trap works and the archdemon is taken down. Gavrin prepares to strike the final blow, ending the archdemon, the blight, and himself. But the first warden turns up and says he's going to strike the final blow, and boy, I've never been more conflicted, because he will die, which is good because he sucks. But the whole point of a Grey Warden is to end the blight, and it's a big thing, and they want to do it. They prepare to do it their whole lives, etc. But not to worry, the evil god of blight kills the first warden, dissolves her dragon, and reforms it as a true form of an archdemon. Now, I'm not sure that sounds lore accurate. Again, I didn't know an archdemon was taking the form of a dragon, but then I also didn't know that just random dragons lived all over the place, like we found out with Tarsh. This is a thing the Blight can do, I suppose. So we fight the archdemon Razikael, and all it really does is lunge at us. I take down its first barrier, it gets staggered, and I pop my ultimate. A good textbook fight. The evil god did not appreciate this, and so takes us to phase 2, where the barrier is armor instead of barrier, which makes me think that maybe armor is harder to remove than a barrier. That's new info. But most importantly, there are now 2 of the archdemon heads, plus we have a random ad. I'm never quite sure if ads are good or bad for me, because more enemies is bad, yes, but sometimes my abilities proc off parries or kills. We're going again. Okay. This is straight up a Pokemon battle, isn't it? We then get a third phase, and this time there's no barrier or armor, but there are 3 heads to tango with now. The middle head shoots fire, the right head shoots poison, and the left head shoots electricity. In addition to extra ads and all of the heads lunging at you, this is a 13-minute fight with no breaks, just FYI. We get the kill, and Davrin stabs the archdemon and is visibly confused that he hasn't died. But we did manage to remove the invincible shield of the god, and so Lucanus takes his shot, scoring only a minor graze to her face. As she makes all the blight super grow in rage, we escape back to the lighthouse. Davrin gives us some numbers. The Grey Wardens had over 1,000 wardens before Weishaupt, and now the order is almost wiped out. Group drama erupts as Davrin suggests that Lucanus missed on purpose due to the demon inside him, and Lucanus claps back with what about the blight in the warden's veins, the blight that the god controls so easily. Brooke gives a quick speech about not being lame, and then we go around the table as every member lists off their motivations for why they weren't 100% locked in on killing a god. Now, I realise this is done narratively so that we establish our goals and know what is coming next. Set up and payoff. It is good narrative. However, I really must complain that if having a minor worry about some ancient artifact not working properly is stopping you from locking in and killing a god, then buddy, you weren't going to be killing that god regardless. As they disperse, we talk to Varric, who suggests that Davrin and Lucanus is the biggest issue to tackle first. I don't really like Varric, never did. I don't really know why they decided to make him such a big dick swinger, you know? Like, I don't care. We also get the hero of the Veilguard pop up. The screen tells us that we need to do our companion quests, basically, and they will be considered focused once they become a hero of the Veilguard. We are at spot on 25 hours into the game at this point, so I figure 1 or 2 runs around the companions and I'll be finished. Perfect. I enjoyed Weishaupt, but I'm still ready for things to be done. I get the combat system, I know the equipment, I'm ready. Let's do it, is what I'm thinking. But of course, I'm not even halfway through yet. Not that I know that, of course. I checked how long Veilguard is, and I saw some estimates that Veilguard could be finished in a bit over 30 hours. And that just goes to show why AI answers are bullshit. I don't know if it's just my personality, but from hour 20, I was trying to just get through the game for less to edit for this video, right? I messed up. I started to enjoy the combat more, and I liked wrapping up the companion quests. 56 hours, my bad. Checking in with all of our companions, and Lucanus is telling Nev her coffee sucks, and Nev is saying that the Threads crime syndicate are bad, but not slavery bad, and want to meet. Valara is having a minor identity crisis because she's an elf and they are fighting the elf gods. She feels she needs to make up for it somehow, and Rook's answer is, to be honest. And my dislike for Valara has extended to her writers because they've made my Rook an idiot. Lucanus is doubting himself because he was distracted. Again, I just really don't buy the whole being distracted so much that in the moment you can't hit with a sword. Davrin is now whittling his fallen Grey Warden friends instead of monsters, and he's pretty shaken up by the fact he's still alive after stabbing an archdemon, which, as mentioned, seems pretty fair to be shaken up by. Being pushed to the edge of taking your own life, even if for the right reason, pulling the trigger, and then still living, must be a proper mindfuck. He agrees that Lucanus did a good job going for the evil god, so it's safe to assume that he was lashing out back at the round table and not having him actually thinking the demon is controlling Lucanus, so that's good at least. Harding says she's had no luck with Orzammar, that's the dwarf city, so it's time to look into other dwarven cities. The original capital of the dwarves, Kal Sharok, which was lost in the first blight. But not like lost as in destroyed, it survived. It was just actually lost, like it was lost. They misplaced it. They were forced to change to survive the Darkspawn, so although dwarves aren't magical, maybe they know more than Orzammar. Tarsh is now performing a coon ritual in which she binds herself, tying down the stuff too dangerous to leave loose. Obvious and on the nose. Yes, but who needs subtlety? Harding turns up and says the Grey Wardens found a cave where one of the blighted dragons is holed up. We then get a story of Solus's regrets. Every time in the world we found a certain treasure, we get to pick up a wolf statue, and when we put them on a plinth in our lighthouse, we get a story. In this first one, we learn that Solus and Elganan fought side by side in ruling, and I assume rebelling from the existing leaders, but once the rebellion was finished, Elganan refused to step down and maintained his power. Another of the elven gods, Mithil, agrees with Elganan and that their people need the leadership to heal. At the round table discussing the vision, we learn this was the start of Solus's rebellion, and he was there for Mithil, and so Mithil siding with Elganan was a big betrayal. Emmerich says that these aren't just Solus's memories, they're regrets that he wishes to forget. Off to talk to Solus, and he confirms that he felt the killing of an archdemon. He talks cryptically about the value of having followers and what they're due for a good leader, whether we as the leader want them to or not. Also, building a strong bond with them all will lower the need to have to ask them to sacrifice themselves instead of just them being willing to sacrifice themselves, I guess. He also congratulates us on surviving an encounter with Gillenane, but heads up, Elganan is much stronger. Cheers, mate. Thanks. Over to the Hosberg Wildlands, the Grey Warden faction home, and we meet Tarsh outside an abandoned mine, and the dragon isn't there. She sees Kunari ropes on the floor and talks about how dare the Arntarm tie her down and make her something she isn't supposed to be, and that isn't right. And then, with all the subtlety of a brick to the dick, she is wearing these same ropes over her chest. In fairness, she then straight up says she can't do anything right, whether that be hunting a dragon or being a woman. A step further even says that her mother put the ropes on her to tie her into being a woman, And I mean, hey, I guess now the amusingly non-subtle beginning of this quest is just straight up a talk about a trans person, so at least we're going with the flow. We have the option of pushing Tarsh towards the Kuhn or the Rivani, and I pick Rivani because she grew up here, and I'm all about immigrant integration, so telling her to live here but stick to her old religion seems horrifying. And that's the end of that quest. Instead of a dragon, we have a chit chat. I did some quests in the zone, but it was just like blight stuff and fights. You get it, so I head to Harding in the Deep Roads. We meet her contact, Stalgard, and he confirms that they have another one who is touched by the gods, just as Harding is. And that seems like an absolute result. Great stuff. We walk through a part of their city, and again, Stalgard confirms that they did indeed have to either become like the Darkspawn or be destroyed by them, which sounds very ominous, and we don't really know what it means yet. We ask, what does he mean? Like Darkspawn. And he doesn't answer, which feels like a failure on Rook to not double down on the question, frankly. We do some blight destroying puzzles after Stalgrad tells us the blight is different, and we already know that, so nothing else to say on it. At this point here, the game does a classic. Nice. Oh no. Something moves ahead of us quickly in a traditional horror game move, so I think they're going to give us like a little horror section, as even Harding comments on it. But that doesn't happen, which is really sad. Why give us the pre-cum if you're not, if you're not going to give us the cum, right? I think that's the best way to phrase that. I think the moments of changing the genre throughout such a long game would have really helped keep it fresh, actually. Missed opportunity is all I'm saying. A horror game for 20 minutes here, a murder mystery for a time over there, you get it. After killing lots of Darkspawn, we open the giant door, and Stalgard tells us that these dwarves revere this person we're about to meet. While there was blight outside, there's none in here, and Harding reckons this being is doing it. For us, that seems promising, as we also don't like the blight. So this oracle says a lot of words, I'll give her that, but basically she says that when the Titans died, the dwarves came to life, but the Titans' magic was gone. Dwarven magic, this stone sense, is actually just Titan magic. At this point, a big rock fights with us for no discernible reason, as our chat with the oracle was going fine, if a touch cryptic. Oh, fuck. Come on, bro. That was bullshit, and you know it, mate. It's then back to the oracle, and she says that the stone was angry at Harding. Then the oracle goes away. And even Stouting quips that, yeah, all she does is talk in riddles. So just because you've hung a lantern on it doesn't mean that the lantern is hung, all right? Back at the lighthouse, and for the first and only time in the game, I actually select a romance option in dialogue. It is the tamest dialogue ever. It's not even flirting. It is just generally supportive. Which is fine, because as we know, we're not playing ourselves in a fantasy world. We're playing the character called Rook, and they would act in this general supportive way because that's who they are. Harding says nice things back to you, and then a Varric cartoon sums up everything I just did, but says vague, ominous things at the end about like things below being angry. On to Davrin, who says he got word of something at the cauldron, which could be the Gloom Howler, and that the Grey Wardens are still wrecked, so we will have to deal with it. Swapping over to nobody's favourite elf, it's Balara and the Arlathan Forest. She has a bad feeling about where these researchers could have gone, so we track them. So I have absolutely zero interest in romancing any of these characters, right? But what could be interesting is, in that case, I could play matchmaker for them. That would be fun, right? Love floating islands. It's just... And then water falling off them. Yes, king. This is what I'm about. And ancient ruins that are overgrown on them. God, here's the good stuff. It's the good. They've given me the good stuff here. I can't lie. Yeah, and look at that. That's pretty far. I mean, that is wallpaper worthy. You know, this is a wallpaper game. I get absolutely battered in this corner here, but I do actually survive. What the fuck? They just fucking destroyed me. I then fight the Burning Anger, which is my first time fighting a fire demon champion, and the burning charges catch me out a few times. After that, we run into Balara's long-thought-dead brother, Syrian. Apparently, this guy was saved by Anaris, who is so comically evil-looking and is a forgotten one, which, if you recall, is one of those bad elvish gods that they didn't pray to because they know they're bad. I am going to spoil it for you right now. There is no subversion in this storyline. Anaris doesn't look evil but is misrepresented and is really a good guy. Or he does bad things but for a good reason. He is just comically evil. Also, Syrian killed those researchers, just throwing that out there. We go through another big fight, but then report back to the Veil Jumpers, and it turns out that only one of the people died for the ritual, so I guess that's fine. They say that the mask Syrian is wearing might be influencing him. They make sure to point out that it's not controlling him, just to be clear. For one of the various side quests, I return to the champion in Treviso that I tried to beat ages ago when I was like 15 levels under them. I kill it in one try now that I'm 7 levels over it, but it still wasn't easy, I must say. Another side quest is to just win 10 skirmish matches for the Laws of Fortune, which I do, as at this point in the game I'm starting to get to grips with the combat. I'm not yet fully there and understanding how I want to play my final build, but I am close. I perfect parry, which triggers my necrotic weapons, and then I spam light attacks. That's the build I'm currently working towards. I've also understood how and when to stagger enemies for maximum effect, which is good. This changes later on when I get different gear. Beating the 10 matches gives you a unique ring, which actually isn't bad, and I use it for a bit of time. 10 matches done. Back at the lighthouse, we get another of Solus's regret visions. Solus calls Mythal love and says the blight was their mistake and is trying to convince her to leave the elven gods. In the round table with the boys, though, they point out that Solus was actively rebelling against the Evanuris, of which Mythal was part of, but was warning her of the blight. But Mythal believes it will never be unleashed. Which I don't think makes sense, but fine, who cares? I guess they're saying the blight is an allegory for a WMD, right? Like, it's just a weapon of mass destruction, but a fancy weapon of mass destruction. And apparently Mythal was betrayed and killed by the other elven gods, FYI. So presumably Solus's regret here is that he didn't try harder to rescue Mythal from her betrayal and death. So, side note, I much prefer Manfred to Asan. Manfred is great. I talked to a few other companions, but they're all just giving me a quest to go and meet them where they actually want to do the quest. So like, breadcrumb me, baby, I guess. But yeah, Manfred's awesome. So I go with Lucanus in Treviso first as we are on the hunt for Zara. An informant tells us there's some Venatori nearby and we overhear them saying to hurry up or Aquila, I don't know, will be annoyed. We don't know who that is yet, but after killing lots of Venatori, we find a note showing that the Venatori are not working with the Antarm and Aquila is in the bank. Mechanically, this Aquila is just a beefed up Venatori mage that we take down relatively easily. We move on to the Chantry and Lucanus' cousin meets us and says he's coming with us. Yes, completely not traitor vibes. Lucanus does mention that his cousin is more about charming people to get his kills than just killing as Lucanus does, which is nice to know that crows have their different styles. So we run through the Chantry and fight one of Zara's sub-commanders, Portia. A lot of cultists plus her as the Uber mage, but we take it down and move on to Faustus, who is an Uber regular cultist with mages on platforms around him. I deal with the mages first, then make short work of Faustus and move on to twin shield bros, Decimus and Nonus. They have a link which can be broken with distance, but I don't really have a way to make my companions keep one of them the other side of the arena, so I kill them through the link because shield enemies are relatively simple these days. Strong attack to break their guard, 3 light attacks, repeat. Finally, we find Zara herself, who is bathing in a very large pool of blood. We just go for it. Why are we giving her sassy vibes? Zara definitely puts up more of a fight than her commanders as she has the ability set of the assassin enemies with a mix of healing and adding barrier using her ads somehow. So she is a true big boss fight as she does everything that a human-sized boss can do in Veilguard. defeating her, and she offers us a deal. Let her live and she'll tell us everything. Spite just wants to kill her, but she offers to tell us who betrayed Lucanus and sent him to the ossuary. And the cousin kills her before she can talk. Of course. Spite flips out and tries to kill the cousin, but the cousin does something, which apparently was blood magic, and it banishes Spite. But he claims not to know what's up, and that I should keep Lucanus away from the crows if he can't control his demon. Lucanus is pretty sure that it was his cousin who betrayed him, and in fairness, at least he didn't try to deny it even when it became comically beyond obvious, as it does right now. Emmerich and Tarsh are having an argument about how to respect each other's vocations, and there's a shockingly ignorant sentiment from Tarsh, someone who is undergoing her own issues with being judged. So anyway, turns out they just don't like death mages, which, sounds fair, to be honest. Also, the writing from Tarsh here rears its more ugly Marvel writing head, but whatever. I then go with Tarsh to meet their mother for dinner. She is trying to decipher what the rune from our original quest with Tarsh says as it's written in the old Kunari language, but there are parts missing. Tarsh chickens out on telling their mum that they're non-binary. Big deal, who cares? I guess that will be the next time. Then there are 3 big scary champion demons that I have to kill to unlock something, and this is me dying to one of them when they were so close to dying. Oh, fuck off. Which is very funny to look at my pain. But I then back-to-back this Formless One demon, I don't even know which quest they're for, and the champion straight after. We find the cauldron with the Hosberg wildlands, kill a load of Darkspawn, and solve a Blight Cyst puzzle. Then we get into a big battle around the bones of an archdemon as the Gloom Howler calls off the Horde so that we can have a chat, weirdly. The Gloom Howler believes herself to be doing the right thing and saving the Griffins from the tyranny of the Grey Wardens, which, for sure, is the first Darkspawn who acts this way and so freely talks to us, but is definitely 100% part of the Darkspawn as opposed to its leader or anything. We then have to beat off the Darkspawn hordes for absolutely ages. Our arms are really getting tired on that one, Asan got a bit of the Gloom Howler's clothing with his beak, so now Davrin will be able to track her. Varric cartoon saying that the Gloom Howler is planning to blight the Griffins, or she already did, very short cartoon, not really sure. We then come to pinnacle of its kind, and this is what I had to kill that Formless One demon for just a few minutes ago for you. I had to kill 3 of them across various zones, and then the main Formless One dragon opens up. It's level 40, while I'm level 34. Boom. That was a long fight. Holy crap. This is the longest fight I have in the game, and this is the first time I'm really fighting a dragon. Yes, I've fought 2 before at this point, but they were relatively limited, and I certainly didn't feel like I got a grasp of what I could parry and what had to be dodged, and when the best time to use my companion's slow time is, and how their weak points worked, and their breath attacks, etc, etc. There's a lot to learn, but over 21 minutes I lock in and manage to one-shot this dragon. I'm still using this build that requires perfect parries to proc my necrotic weapons, so that's not great into a dragon, but this was the hardest fight I had in the game due to being underleveled and underexperienced. In my mind, this fight happened way earlier than 31 hours into the game. Thinking back on Veilguard, I thought I got to this fight before Weishaupt, and before all of the Blight Champion fights, even though I very clearly didn't. I definitely 100% in my mind did this fight before I did the Tarsh Lords of Fortune arena fight, for example. 100%. I think what that means is that this fight was just such a standout that it's the only boss fight I truly remember. And sure enough, after this fight, I don't really struggle into any other battle, and certainly none of them take this long again. At some point soon, well, probably in about 10 hours, lol, I swap to speccing one of my gear into plus necrosis damage and get an item that gives me necrosis weapon on fight start instead of on parry, and that really helps my damage. I also find something that gives me unlimited arrows, and I end up cheesing a few fights by just spamming arrows, which isn't fun and should be removed from the game. I mean, given the opportunity, a gamer will optimize the fun out of a game, right? Well, that's exactly what I did with the arrow spam. I didn't use it all the time, far from it, but I basically used it to remove any enemy range from the fight, and it was like, bit cheesy. So anyway, moving on with the story, Nev takes us back to the Cobbled Swan, where we last met the Inquisitor. A local Threads criminal tells us that the Venatori are hurting the Threads gang, and even abducted their leader from right here in the Cobbled Swan. They want us to get their leader back because the Venatori are watching every single Threads member, but not us, apparently, which is good, I guess. So we destroy a whole load of Venatori in the Threads market, and also come across a new type of puzzle, where the answer to every version of it is pull the switch, freeze the switch, then pull the switch again. But weirdly, we're 31 hours into the game, and this is the first time I've seen this freeze puzzle for Nev. So we find the Threads leader who has been possessed by somebody else, someone that Nev calls Alia. We fight the possessed Threads leader, and it's a pretty typical fight, if significantly less climactic than, for example, Zara from Treviso and Lucanus. Anyway, Nev and Alia have a bit of a chat, and as thanks for saving him, the Threads leader gives us dirt on that Venatori ages ago who sold a red lyric tablet, if you remember. Yeah, I don't either. And I also don't get why we need dirt on him for the Shadow Dragons to kill him. Like, just kill him, dude. You're criminals. But back at the lighthouse, Nev tells us who Alia is and that she's an old case of hers. One she caught but let get away after turning her over to the authorities. She's just your standard blood mage who was going to sacrifice everyone to gain everything. You know how it is. At this point, I assume she's being set up as Nev's big final confrontation, because otherwise I have no idea where Nev's story is going. We have a round table chat, and Davrian and Lucanus have buried the hatchet as they both blame themselves for our lack of killing the evil god, but then both tell the other it wasn't their fault. But some fun banter between them about their differences, and all is right with the world. The rest of this talk is just everyone saying again that they need to put aside their differences or they can't save the world, and I don't know why we're having this said again, because that's literally all I've been doing since Weishaupt. Immediately following this, we go and talk to Spite, Lucanus' demon. Spite says that Lucanus hasn't kept his promise, which was to escape the prison and get out. All very cryptic, and then Lucanus wakes up again. This is a little breadcrumb for later. An interesting lore tidbit, but Harding tells us that she's dreaming, which is weird because dwarves don't dream, apparently. Presumably in this world, dreaming is directly related to the Fade and magic, I guess. Emmerich talks to us about the Hand of Glory, which the Tevinter could have only gotten from an experienced death mage. We learn from the corpse that this all leads back to Blackthorn Manor. This is Emmerich's end goal quite clearly, so in my head, I'm thinking that we're leading up to everyone's end goal here, as we're getting new leads and names for multiple characters. I will say that I distinctly recall this cutscene during my playthrough and not remembering where the Hand of Glory came from. I figured, hey, being a long game, I must have missed it. Well, I checked this script for Hand of Glory, and I didn't mention it previously to you either, so I missed it again. Yeah, sorry, no idea where the Hand of Glory came from. Presumably an Emmerich quest. Nev is still trying to figure out what's up with the wisps hanging around her place, and then tells me about a stakeout she went on tracking down a mime. And I guess it's meant to be funny and endearing, but it's not, so moving on. Back at the round table, and yes, it felt pretty odd to do a round table chat, talk to 3 people, and then go straight into another round table chat, and the Grey Wardens have found the Blighted Dragon from Treviso just hanging out in Hosberg. In true RPG style, instead of going on to the main quest, I make sure I clear up some side quests, and so I take Emmerich to Blackthorn Manor. We've got the Hand of Glory with us. Now, remember that in this world, death magic doesn't have to mean evil. Demons are evil, death and necromancy is just kind of neutral. And so Emmerich points out that things here don't seem good. I run all through the manor and find some sigils that need us to, shockingly, kill a demon in various different parts of the mansion where there are tortured spirits. Emmerich uses his special powers to put them to rest, and that then opens the sealed door. It leads us into the Fade, which makes sense since we're dealing with the blood magic necromancer or something, and these things always lead to the Fade, of course. And then we have to defeat a rage demon and some undead. I struggle with the fire demons quite a bit, but I've definitely improved since last time. That leads us to Hezenkos, a former classmate of Emmerich's, and she's creating some sort of lantern that sucks souls. She complains that the Morn Watchers are no place for a mage with ambition, and you know that makes sense actually, because they're an order all about preservation, aka stagnation, and death. So she's struck out on her own to get pretty radical with things. Emmerich, the big softy, only thinks she's evil if there's no hope of convincing her otherwise. The lantern could tear a hole in the Fade, so we can't attack her. But luckily, she pulls the classic runaway, leaving us to fight her underlings move, which we then defeat and so live another day. Whereas, if she just fought us herself, would probably have won. A classic. We escape and rejoin her in the main hall of the mansion where she complains and or gloats about being outcast. She calls the Hand of Glory back to her and reveals that she traded it with the Venatori in exchange for some favours after she turned herself into some sort of undead, something that Emmerich never had the courage to do, she claims. We then fight a demon called Rampant Ego, which makes sense and is incredibly on the nose, and we absolutely obliterate though, no trouble, because we're kind of out leveling everything at this point, to be honest. It's level 30, I'm level 35. Again, after dealing with a dragon 7 levels above me, everything else is easier. Back at the lighthouse, Emmerich lays it all down and says that they used to be classmates and even friends, but she never treated spirits well and only wanted power and recognition. Barrett Cartoon sums it up for us and says she's going to create some big scary monster. Interestingly, I just got level 36 after killing the ego demon, but then I immediately got a full level of experience and got 37 from ending this conversation. So ending quests is the way to level, I guess. Not that I ever paid attention to levels when I was playing, but it's interesting. No, really, though, at this point of the game, I had not once noticed enemies have levels. I didn't know if they all scaled with me, so the game could be completed entirely at level 1, or if I was actually out-leveling things, which is an amusing note of how completely unobservant I am in games, I guess. Straight over to Harding after she smashed some Laws of Fortune training, which is the first time, actually, it's been implied that our companions are doing things to improve themselves outside of banging in the lighthouse. I also don't know canonically how long we are supposed to have been in the lighthouse at this point. Anyway, this Harding meeting is weird because it's just a standard breadcrumb quest telling me to go meet her somewhere else properly, which I normally get from the lighthouse, and if it's just a few sentences, I don't bother including them in this video, but this one made me go to her somewhere else to give me a... Anyway, so on to the main quest and the Hosberg wetlands. A reminder that the first warden is Dedaroni, and now everyone is looking to this little dwarf warden, apparently, and this is the blight to end all blights. The dragon is in a tower nearby recovering from its wounds after we fought it at Treviso, which again really makes me question how long we've been doing all of this. The preliminary plan is that we flush the dragon out of hiding, and then the Grey Wardens will fire ballistas at it, and the Veil Wardens would be here, but they're busy with Venatori cultists. Tarsh has a horn that challenges the dragon, instantly summoning it to a fight. Now, notice that Corius the Ice Talon doesn't have a level next to his name. This is presumably because it's a scaling enemy, and as one of the main fights that can't be skipped, it needs to scale to your level. Also note that this blighted dragon has disgusting looking tentacle things hanging from its neck, which really reminds me of Princess Mononoke. So this is a standard dragon fight. When it gets stunned down, I slow time to hit it more. This guy dies pretty easily. Evil God turns up with her second blight dragon, and now I have to fight 2 dragons, which I thought might be an issue. Super cool, but an issue. I'm not sure how I can handle 2 drags, I'm going to be honest. One sweeps the arena with fire while the other shoots snowballs at the same time. Then we just straight up have to kill 2 dragons as the evil god taunts us in the background and says vaguely evil sounding things. Then the Treviso crows turn up with some poison ballista bolts. Presumably, if I'd saved Minrathos, I'd have gotten whatever their version of ballista bolts are. This opens the ability to have the ballista fire on my current target, which does a bit of damage, but more importantly knocks the dragon down. I line up the ballista knockdown with my time slows and manage to take down both dragons with a lot more ease than I expected. So, Evil God Lady gives us the classic Evil God line of how the blight isn't bad and it's actually life, and she's going to reanimate both of her dead dragons. We get a little cutscene where we go into overdrive mode and one man tank a blister bolt straight into the evil god, which I'm pretty confused by. It really feels like there's two writer teams at play here, and this was the B team. Elganan freezes everyone in place except for Rook, who can still move a bit, of course, and then the gods run away. Now, I'm all for Elganan being a cautious god on top of his immense power. That's totally fine, cool. But he notices that Rook is breaking his spell where no one else is, and that the Dreadwolf is helping us. A single flick of the hand magic bolt to the face would have ended us right here. We weren't at full mobility, he could have wrecked us. I understand narrative tensions, but again, decisions here really feel like a B-team decision. Back at the lighthouse, and we have a round table where everyone is, as we call it, hanging a lantern on the fact Elganan didn't kill us all. And while it's absolutely mandatory that they do this and answer this question immediately, the fact they're having to do it just goes to show that even the writers know it was the dumbest thing they had to write in the game, and in a game with Balara that is saying a lot. Aside from that, the plan going forwards is to continue our own personal quests, but go and help the Veil Jumpers with their Venatori cultist problem as well. We have another chat with Varric, and I can't even tell you why he doesn't say anything useful or, more importantly, anything interesting. I get a quest from every companion now, so the important ones are Emmerich and Davrin working together to discover that the Gloom Howler is an elven Grey Warden, which definitely raises questions when last we heard from her was that the Grey Wardens were hurting the Griffins. There's also a little bit more than just a standard breadcrumb quest with Balara, but it's just her whining, so we'll ignore that. But something about her brother, we know that's her companion goal, you get it, whatever, who cares about her? We follow up on Tarsh's quest first because it's about killing a dragon, but we're off to a bad start where Tarsh tries to imply that a natural dragon will be stronger than a blighted dragon, which sounds just dumb to me, so we're going to ignore that. Along the way, we find out that it's the Antarm who are capturing dragons and turning them over to the gods in exchange for power. And while that's sad, it's not going to stop us from absolutely decimating this dragon. And hey, Tarsh, screw you, it wasn't harder than two dragons at the same time. What a stupid comment. Like, genuinely, okay. I'm not going to say the R word. That will come later in my channel once I become a true degen, but you know what I mean. It was considered a high dragon though, but I don't actually know what that means. I assume that killing all high dragons unlocks something, but I'm not sure what yet. And then we have a chat with Tarsh, and although I like Tarsh, this is just another conversation focusing on how they are something different inside to outside, with no further introspection towards themselves, but they say they're ready to talk to their mother about being non-binary, so at least we're progressing forwards. We then get a Varric cartoon about the Dragon King and a traitor in the Lords of Fortune and bait for Tarsh, which means we can guess now that the Dragon King is Tarsh's final companion boss we're working towards instead of, up until now, I had assumed it would have been telling her mother, so that's again a nice update to what's going on with Tarsh. On to Harding in the Deep Roads, and we need to find some lost Dwarven patrol. No, don't worry, there was no missing lore. There is just now a patrol of dwarves that went missing, and for no reason, we are the ones searching for them. I also do not know why this is. Why us? Oh, I don't know. We kill a bunch of undead and find dwarves encased in stone, but still alive, and free them. We make it to Stalgard, and I like him, so that's, he's a fun character, it turns out. That's good. Considering that I don't like most side characters in the game, this is good. This is all a tainted titan's heart, and we're going to push further on and deal with it here and now. And sure enough, we are now fighting the shade of a titan. The titan is angry and in pain, and it looks like Harding, and that's weird, and at this point we're not entirely sure why. So we deal with it by killing some enemies, shocker. In this instance, something called Wrath of the Stone. With that done, Harding is having a superpower moment where the Titan is overtaking her, but we say something about friendship being better than hatred. We then get a big choice to honor the Titan's anger and embrace it, or to remember who Harding is, rejecting the anger through Harding's compassion. Now, I went for compassion because Harding is clearly pitched as a compassionate person, and that felt right for me. But I do see that she's emotion driven, and so embracing the anger also kind of makes sense for her character. We literally hold hands in a friendship circle, and that saves Harding. Yeah, I don't know, guys. Whatever. Back at the lighthouse, and we have our epic showdown with Tarsh's mother. Tarsh serves up some meat, and Mumsy says she'd prefer some veg. Classic start. Oh, hold on. She says a few weeks in my company, and that gives us a timeline. Excellent drop for our own internal clock. But Mum does seem very annoyed that she removed Tarsh from the coon, which seems odd as it was her choice, but fine. But she goes on to say that the coon is incredibly strict and she was not made for rearing children, and she knows she's a failure of a mother. Tarsh then just bursts in and says that she's non-binary. Mum asks what is that, and Tarsh tells her. Mum apologises if it was something she did that caused this, and goes on to say that under the coon, they have a term for non-binary called Akun Athlock. And then Tarsh blows up, and the mother leaves as she sees that her presence is causing Tarsh distress. Tarsh then says that they won't hide anymore, and if Mum has a problem with it, tough tits, mate. And I just don't know what happened with the writing team here. So here's the thing. Non-binary is such a modern term, there's no other way to take this whole conversation. Had it been couched in what the mother had just said about the Akun Thalok being the coon term for it, and we had begun with that, so remove the phrasing non-binary, this would have all made so much more sense and be able to be discussed and removed from modern politics. And we could just take it as is without getting our own preconceived notions from the world.
It was new for her. Just give her
No, it
some
wasn't.
time.
She just said
No.
that it's a thing in coon.
It's okay. So I'm supposed to struggle with who I am?
She just
Even if I don't
told
feel like
you
I'm
that
fake,
the
even if
coon
I
have a
feel
word
wrong.
for it. What are you smoking?
Misunderstood.
That's crazy. Like, the mother even said, oh yeah, there's a word for that in the coon, so I'll call you that. And Tosh was like, no, oh my god, why do you have to keep talking about it? It's like, bitch, you started talking about it, and she just used her verbiage. What a crazy take. Because the mum literally accepted the non-binary status immediately, and related it to something in her own culture, and Tosh freaked out despite receiving only acceptance. This was the most annoyed I'd been at Tosh the entire game, and to be clear, not because I'm annoyed at the character, but because I'm annoyed at the writers shoehorning some self-insert dialogue into this because it made no sense at all. Tarsh's reaction had nothing to do with the mother's dialogue, and this was just silly. Hence why I say it's probably a self-insert, because it doesn't make any sense for either the character or the situation at this point. Tarsh has had exactly zero pushback from any character in the entire game, whether those that don't know her or those absolutely closest to her, about being non-binary. There was no pushback from the mother. What? Okay, anyway, more on my final thoughts when I unlock the final Hero of the Veilguard mission for each of them, so moving on, because I could stay here forever, because this was just terrible. Emmerich and Lucanus are raising the dead and forcing Zara to answer questions. Obviously, confirming that Lucanus' cousin is the traitor and he wanted to be First Talon. Valara is writing a dirty novel that seems to be based on Rook. Cool. The Lords of Treasure, or whatever they're called, I kill another high dragon. Kataranda the Storm Rider. Even though I outlevel these high dragons now, this is still a 12-minute fight, which is a bit nutty when you think about it. For Nev, we're back in a dodgy tavern and talking to the Threads again, and this time we're all united on taking down Aelia. The Threads are giving us the names of missing people so that Nev can investigate them. In exchange, the Threads just want to make sure that if we find Aelia, we kill her. Docktown belongs to the Threads. My understanding is that if you have saved Minrathous, you are able to not kill her and instead deal with her in a somewhat more legal manner, as the Venatori wouldn't be the law as they are in this playthrough. As it is, we can only agree that we will kill her. In one of my side quests here, I hit level 40, killing a demon called Desperation. I also saved the Viper from being publicly executed by the Venatori. I do some other side quests for the Grey Wardens as well, but they're super boring and in a boring looking zone, so we'll ignore those. Back at the lighthouse, and everyone has a new quest for me because we're closing in on their final Hero of the Veilguard quests. We're nearing the end, lads, almost there. Or that's what I thought. I was at 37 hours played, so there are still 19 hours left in the game at this point, guys. So Tarsh and Harding are talking about their special thing and how that makes them feel when Harding leaves, and Tarsh says they want to get Harding a present, something special. I suggested gemstone because dwarves, right? But this is cool. I like this. You know what? Let's do it. Let's talk about my experiences of the romances in Veilguard right now. I didn't like any of the companions enough to romance them until late enough in the game that my chance was gone. I have deliberately skipped all romance dialogue options because they all felt so awkward. Look, I'm a gooner. I grew up a horny dude trying to bang the pixels in my BioWare games. It's in my blood, okay? I speed romance every Dragon Age and Mass Effect game up until now, just to bang them. What was I on? It was genuinely one of the aspects of the games that made me continue playing. The graphics in Veilguard look great. I'd love to see some HD tits as the culmination of becoming the Riz King. But holy moly, I have zero interest in any of these characters. All terrible. None of them made a good first impression for me personally. I've grown to like some of them, as I will cover when I discuss each companion, but yeah, they all sucked, and not in the good way. As such, by this point in the game, I have romanced no one, and so although it was too late for me, I am actually really glad to see some of the characters start to pair off with each other, which are Harding and Tarsh and Lucanus and Nev. Just because I don't want to romance the companions doesn't mean I don't want some fun romance in the game still. I will say that this is hugely underdeveloped though. There's like 2 scenes total for the romance of Tarsh and Harding. This one, and then later when Tarsh gives Harding the gift. But it's fine, I get it, right? Like, also, when talking about the romance options of Veilguard, it's the standard BioWare thing of just unthinkingly select every romance option for the character you want to get the absolute worst sex scene of the series. And you'll get it when you're supposed to with that character, and that's it. It's binary. Again, unlike Tarsh. Very funny. Well done. Well done me for making that joke twice. The only hard block being Lucanus if you don't save Treviso, though. You can still romance Nev because she's a more practical person and so understands why you made the choice you did, but Lucanus is more emotional and so never forgives you enough to bang. A shame. Every companion is romanceable and there's no gender lock. I think that from a player perspective this is good. In past BioWare games, every character would have a gender preference and so would only get with a male or female player depending on their personality. This is a nice little touch of character building, but I also think serves no real purpose for the point of a game. Well, keeping in mind that all of the characters in Veilguard have a certain personality type, right? Yes, there are different personality types, but they are also of a type to agree with each other. None of them are there when they don't want to be, if you get what I'm saying. No one is a religious fanatic forced into it. There is no extreme companion. Everyone's very in the middle of cheeky little quip, queer, friendly Marvel writing style. So having every companion be player sexual makes a lot of sense. I did go and check out all of the final romance scenes, and they all seemed fine. They all seemed like a good ending to a romantic interest. They also showed zero skin, and yes, I'm making a stand here. I want a hot sex scene in my BioWare games. And yes, I accept that the final romance scenes were good emotionally, but they were not good physically. I'm a gamer. I live for the hot, digi nudes. While I'm here in this safe space, as created by this 3 hours of previous Veilguard footage, I'm going to say it. None of the female companions are hot. I like that they've got a diverse selection to pick from. That's good. The more the better. But this is a very clear decision to not make any of the companions traditionally attractive. And I'm going to be honest, that's super weird. We might as well call it Dragon Age Concord. I have grown to like all of the characters except Balara, but literally none of them were just, and I'm using quotation marks here, normal. And that was, in my opinion, a really big mistake from the dev team. We all saw how the horrifying grifter crowd jumped on the anti-trans thing, but there wasn't anything to jump off of that onto. There was no counterpoint because Veilguard didn't provide the default option. We call it normal and default because it is what 90% of the population wants, and ignoring 90% of the player base is probably a bad idea, I think we can all agree. If I were to play through Veilguard again, I would romance Harding, Nev, or Tarsh. But on my first run, none of these were good options until 30 hours in, by which point it was too late. There was no obvious choice based on looks, even if the whole twist is that obvious person based on looks was actually the worst romance option. It wasn't there. Anyway, we go to Davrin first, and he meets with his old mentor, the one that took him in and taught him to be a tracker. Don't worry, I didn't know he was a woodsman either. We need to gather reagents to heal the local Halla. Again, Halla are just deer. So we make some food and a Halla eats it, but the Halla is sick, and apparently they're all sick and all need help. Hassan doesn't attack the Halla and treat it as prey, and this will be relevant later. The old mentor says that Davrin is now a caretaker, not just a guy good at punching stuff. A protector, not a killer. Over to Nev, and we are now skipping stones on the water to clear our heads because we've got no leads to find Alia. Nev reveals that she wants to inspire Dogtown. If she could take a job and follow through so that at least one person knew something in the world was reliable, she'd have done enough. In thinking about this, she thought of people she'd let down, and one of them leads us to remnants. And sure enough, we see a flashback of Alia wanting to get more power. We can tell her she's a hero or she's doing what needs to be done. But as we didn't save Minrathous, we're locked out of the hero path, so she's willing to just get things done. Probably with death, if I had to guess. Over to Lucanus, and we have proof that the first Talon, that old woman from when we recruited Lucanus, is still alive, and obviously his cousin has orchestrated all of this. We need to deal with the cousin and rescue the first Talon at the same time, but then Spite joins the conversation asking us to help him. Help Spite, because Lucanus is trapped, and so we go on a dream quest inside Lucanus and Spite. Apparently Lucanus has locked himself inside himself. And so Spite needs my help to reach him. So we run through a twisted version of the ossuary, which was a prison, so that does make sense. As we run through the maze to reach Lucanus, we meet the thoughts that he has set up to protect himself. First is Katerina, the first Talon, who thinks the Lucanus we brought back is just a demon, not her grandson. Then Harding, who is the representation of a good person, who says, what if all of this is just a trick from Spite? Then Nev, who must be here because she's Lucanus's crush, but she doesn't say anything of any relevance. Next is his cousin, the one who betrayed him, and he just says we have bigger things to worry about. Finally, we reach Lucanus, and we find out that Spite and Lucanus's agreement was all about freedom. However, as long as Lucanus refuses to be free himself, Spite is equally trapped and can't be free. So we talk Lucanus into believing in himself and forming an alliance with Spite instead of them constantly fighting for control of the body, and manage to free them both. Back in the real world, apparently Rook and Lucanus have been standing there for like 20 seconds, really awkwardly. Back at the lighthouse doing another round of companion chats, Balara is finding out about this Anaris god chap, folk guy, and turns out he wants to unleash an army of demons on the world, and is using Balara's brother to begin this. Luckily, Syrian has reached out to talk. Lucanus is making dinner for the group and has made a dessert just for Nev. We suggest that he hold off on that as they're not yet ready for pie. We go to the necropolis and have another graveyard walk with Emmerich. We walk in on him chiding Manfred and musing how will Manfred survive if he ever leaves. Also, he explains to us that a lich is a mage that has become an undead but retaining who they are in life fully into undeath. He has been granted the right to attempt the ritual trial of becoming a lich. The point of the Lich Council is to be a guiding hand over longer than just a single lifespan, as of course they are immortal. However, Emmerich's entire shtick is that he's afraid of death, and when he becomes a lich he has to die, and there is a chance he doesn't become a lich and simply dies. So he's not yet fully convinced he should go through with it. He decides that until he stops Hezenkos, the half-lich, his mind won't be settled enough to go through with the ritual himself. Balara meets with Syrian, and we try to convince him to not follow the evil god Anaris. But Syrian is pretty into it all and thinks Anaris is doing all of this to help the mortal elves and it will lead to a better life for all. As we walk away, we tell Balara that, hey, If he does this, we are going to have to stop him, and I fully assume that means we've just told her we're going to kill her brother. And honestly, anything that causes Balara pain sounds amazing to me. Davrin is having tea with Asan and Rook, and nothing of any interest is said. Moving on. Nev is lamenting over all the fallen of Minrathous and gets a tip that someone knows where Aelia is, and so we need to find the Sanctum Lusacan. Back at the lighthouse, and Lucanus gets word that his cousin is making his big play, gathering all the crows together for some reason. Balara has created a way to sense the magical resonance of the rituals to summon Anaris. Harding and Emric, my two most used companions when I'm roaming the world, are having an argument. They're going for a 2-day camping trip. And Emric wants to take 9 books with him and a razor kit, etc., etc., while Harding just has a bedroll and a canteen. She's trying to show him more of Ferelden, but he's not viewing it the way she wants. I say they should just get along and respect what each other gets out of the experience, and they immediately make up. Moving on to Lucanus' quest to free the First Talon and get to the bottom of what his cousin is really planning, we find ourselves killing Venatori cultists back where I first attempted to take out a Blight Cis champion over 10 levels above me at the time, 30 hours ago, you remember it. Very nostalgic for me, hopefully you too. We fight our way through lots more cultists and actually just have a really nice run through a cool, fancy Venice and see the sights. It was lovely, yeah. We then find the Villa della Morte entering through the servants' entrance like the peasants that we are, and find Katerina the First Talon. We then crash Lucanus' cousin's party, and basically he's rushing a vote to get himself elected as First Talon. Telltale sign he's in the wrong is that he calls the Venatori his new allies. We then absolutely beat him off, but he's just a pretty standard ninja-style mob, but with, lots of health. Not as cool as Zara was. We have the option of killing him or imprisoning him, and we go with prison. Now, I went with this because I feel that people shouldn't be allowed to escape mortal justice for their crimes, but Lucanus takes it because deep down he still cares. But, whatever, fine, as long as we're all on the same page. Also, Lucanus is then made First Talon of the Crows, which changes nothing, and he's still out to finish Rook's contract of killing some gods. And that makes Lucanus our first official hero of the Veilguard, which just means they've reached the pinnacle of their storyline and don't have any big interactions left with Rook, and they get their defining armor. So now I can do my first character breakdown and thoughts, and it's Lucanus first on the chopping block. In truth, I don't have much to say about Lucanus. He's an assassin that goes from being imprisoned when we find him to leader of the Antivan Crows with a contract to kill God. I never really connected with his personality. He seemed pretty bland, and giving a clearly Italian guy an interest in coffee and cooking seemed insulting to Treviso. It's fine to be inspired by Venice and Italy, I get it, but try breaking the stereotypes somewhere, please. This wasn't fancy Venice, it was just Venice. This wasn't fancy Italian, it was just Italian. I get it, he's a killer, but has an unassuming interest outside of his killer life. It's a fun trope, normally. I enjoyed Spite as a concept and would have liked to see more of him, and I think the idea of Lucanus having to accept his failure by embracing his life with the demon inside him was a good way of handling that. Depossessing him would have been the obvious storyline, but I liked this version. I went Antivan Crow as my background, of course, so this should have been a character I really liked. By the end of the playthrough, I really just wished I'd picked a different background. And Lucanus played into all the trappings of what I didn't like about my background. Treviso is a lovely looking place, and I'm glad it's in the game for some visual variety, but it's literally just Venice filled with literal Italians. Didn't do much for me. So yeah, Lucanus, God Assassin, resounding meh for our first hero of the Veilguard. Nev and Emric are working together to question a killed Shadow Dragon member who gives them a name and will be Nev's next person of interest. Balara and the Veiljumper leaders pop in to tell us that the Venatori cultists are gathering in Arlathan Forest, and that's our next big mission, and we assume it's a power play to make up for the lost Archdemon. We dress up in Venatori cultist disguises and infiltrate the party. One of the first things we see is a callback to earlier and Demeter's Crossing, the first blighted village we came across. The mayor, who we chose to let live, is in this party. There's no other consequence, he doesn't recognize us or anything, but it's a small throwback to a choice we made and how even though someone hit absolute rock bottom, doesn't mean they're going to climb out from that hole. They're also having a party game of like blood magically tearing apart a Halla, which is cool, I guess. We reach our first questioning from a guard and Nev acts superior, and the guard just folds instantly and tells us that Elganan is here. Not Gillenane, which is great news for me because it's much easier in my script to write the word Elganan, who then senses our presence in a similar way to how he sensed us at Weishaupt as the only person able to move under his spell thanks to the Dreadwolf. He's giving a speech, and it's a very normal politician speech talking about breaking the chains of oppression, and his archdemon dragon thing is here backing him up. Cool stuff. All he asks in return is worship, which everybody here already does, so a bit of a moot point. Valara and Nev work magic together to help us break free of the hypnosis Elganan is casting over the crowd. We ditch our cultist disguises as we've been found, and some fighting ensues as we run away, but not entirely away. Sorry, we're trying to save some Dalish prisoners, I think. I don't know why. As we run, the archdemon can be seen in the background. Very cool. And once again, I praise the sense of scale in this banger of a game. We also come across a new enemy type for the first time, I think. This one's called a Bloodforge, but it's a Venatori construct. It's like the ogre big guy for the Venatori. We then run into a mental trap from Elganan where we can take 3 routes, but each time we loop back to the start. Once you've tried all 3 routes, Solas drops in and breaks us free. I know what you're thinking. Weird mind tricks with looping puzzles, that's a fun puzzle to be solved, surely. No puzzle, just try each way once, job done, get broken free. With that done, we fight a bit more and then free the Dalish. This gives us a Varric cartoon that says Elganan would make the Venatori pay dearly for their failure, using them as the sacrifice to his archdemon instead of the Dalish. Back at the lighthouse, and we have a catch-up with lots of couples. Lucalis and Davrin are trading stories of their bad jobs in days gone past, showing that they're over their squabbles for good. I chat to Solas, who says that although all of the elf gods were terrible, Elganan was the worst, for sure. Elganan is Solas's worst version of himself. The fear that Solas could have become him is all Solas cares about. He's arrogant and uncaring to the extreme, which, looking at Solas, is tough to not see already, as he was planning to invade the world with demons, but okay, sure, bro. He goes on to explain that his issue with modern-day elves is that they attacked him after he told them who or what he was, and they continued to worship Elganan. Solas, bit of a little bish. We also get a little note that we've earned the respect of the Dreadwolf, which is interesting. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. I would have really liked to see some metagaming here. Like, have the otherwise already true and correct UI go against us when Solas is involved, right? That'd be cool. Really lean into the god of lies and deception to the point it even tricks our UI, right? It's not that kind of game, but it would be cool. He also says this will probably be our last chance to take care of things that aren't plot relevant. At the round table, we confirmed that Elganan has powered up his archdemon and is immortal. I'm going to be honest, I thought he always had those and was always immortal this whole time, but I guess not, I don't know. And we killed one archdemon, so why not just do it again, right? Like, I've killed one, I'll kill a second. Well, apparently because it took the lives of hundreds of wardens and a once-in-a-generation mountain-sized trap to do it. So I guess we can't, whatever. Boo-hoo. We run down all of our options and go and do the rounds with our companions. Checking in on Emmerich, and we get the best characters in the game. Manfred, who is cool AF, as foretold, and Vorgoth appears out of nowhere beside us. Love it. These are my 2 favourite characters, not even kidding. Honestly, give me DLC where it's just Manfred and Vorgoth palling around, and I am actually like, I'll pay. I'll pay same price again, full price. They have confirmed that Johanna, that's Hezenkos, is building a magical WMD called a Gloaming Lantern, but they know where she is. She's back at Blackthorn Manor throwing a party. Harding wants a deep heart-to-heart about how she feels and the memory of suffering under the Titan's overwhelming rage and pain. But then she had friends around her and she was fine. So I'm paraphrasing that, obviously, but she's fine. She laments about Solus and how everyone thinks it's time to just kill him, even his friends like Varric and the Inquisitor, and she knows that means there's a point where we should give up on her, possibly, if she had kept going down that angry Titan path. Everyone else just gives us breadcrumb chats to go find them, and so we go do Balara and deal with her brother shenanigans. The brother has started his ritual to bring an ancient elven god into the world, like we don't have enough of them already, right? This is the first time I've used Balara since the start of the game, so I quickly level up her skills and equip her better gear. We have to go through some elf ruin puzzles, as you'd expect. We get into a fight as we blow up an elven artifact. We find ourselves running through a cool looking transformed floating landscape, and you know how fond of those I am. And then we find ourselves at the ritual where we have luckily already convinced the brother to betray his god, and so actually us turning up now is just a bit of a hindrance. But no problems, we stop the ritual with the help of the brother, but in classic ARPG style, we then have to fight the god as he's trying to be summoned into the world. We smash some pillars multiple times, plus waves of enemies, plus the summoning god, and job's a good 'un. I will confess, I was super surprised that we didn't end up having to kill the brother here. That would have been a big choice. I would have liked it. So no, instead evil god killed the brother and we just say no worries bro, all's forgiven. This was definitely Balara's big moment, so I was quite surprised we didn't get her as a guardian of the Veil here, but fine. Straight into Emmeric's big final quest, and we're back at the manor to find Hezenkos's lantern that, if you've forgotten, is just a big WMD, basically. This was a great location, so I'm really happy to return to it. It would have been crazy to make such a massive and detailed place for a single mission. We need to infiltrate this big dinner she's throwing, so we send in Manfred as a servant, as all the butlers are wisp-possessed skeletons already. He will overhear the location of her workshop, and bada bing, bada boom, we trash the lantern. We enter and find the party in full swing. Manfred mingles for a bit, and we get a tip to find a spectral tome from the library, which of course involves, you guessed it, running to a place and killing some things. We hand the tome to Manfred to get it to someone in the party, who leaks that there's a tomb with a particularly old skeleton who doesn't like us but agrees because Manfred is such a bro to tell us where Hezenkos is. Manfred also says his first full word here, which, of course, Emmerich is very excited about. So am I, if I'm honest. But canonically, it's Emmerich that's excited here, not me. Very genuinely, this is like his baby saying its first word. We kill some guards, of course, and then solve a puzzle room, which was actually very easy, except I just couldn't see one of the levers. We kill absolute swarms of ravenous dead, which I really wish they'd throw more weak enemies at me, because it feels really fun to just mow down huge groups of people. As we close on Hezenkos, we find that she stole an entire giant chamber from the necropolis. Finding her, she taunts Emmerich about being too scared to take the power he wants just because he might die. Okay, sure. Which is a pretty great taunt, all things considered, and really hits home how nuts villains in this game are. And the mad scientist vibe goes pretty well with it, doesn't it? So she activates a giant golem using the lantern and sucking off everyone in the party. We then have to kill her in a big old boss battle. At this point, it's honestly pretty standard for a caster boss, so nothing too special. A phase taking down the barrier, then they kite you a while, spawning in ads and throwing around some special spells unique to them. In this case, a Deathwind Tornado and a Skull spell. At the end of the fight, with us having canonically failed to stop Hezenkos and Emmerich refusing to jump in and do what needs to be done because he's too afraid to die, Manfred is the true hero and jumps in to yank out the lantern, which inspires Emmerich to use his power. And it all works, and the party is saved, and the big WMD bone golem fails. We cut to Emmerich asking the Lich Lords to return Manfred to the world. But of course, if we do that, then Emmerich must give up Lichdom. Why? I don't know. It just is. This took me a lot of thinking, I can't lie. I really liked Manfred, and as such, I chose to honour the sacrifice and conscious choice that Manfred made. The characters didn't take it that way, unfortunately. They took it as insisting that Emmerich needs to come to terms with death. But for the record, For me, it was purely about Manfred's choice being honoured. We immediately go and talk to Emmerich, and Vorgoth, my main man, drops another cold AF joke on us. But this chat is just Emmerich formally asking us to attend his Lichdom party. Over to Balara, and she's reading her brother's last words, and I so don't care at all. Oh, but you know what? Actually, this was the final piece required to unlock her Hero of the Veilguard, so I guess I'll give my final thoughts about Balara. I hated Balara from 5 minutes after meeting her, and I was being generous in that first 5 minutes, guys. I just hated how she was written, and I fully accept this is a me thing. The stereotype she was written as, the girl that ignores you in favour of some curiosity, isn't inherently boring to me. I like it sometimes. The autistic angle is what they're going for, it makes sense. The hard ignoring of social cues, etc. But as always in these things, the disability representation falls hollow as they've gone with the most socially acceptable form of this affliction, so that it ends up as cute and quirky instead of something in any way, shape or form and negative. I work with lots of people that are on this level of the spectrum, and I assure you, it isn't cute and quirky. Scientists and engineers are a bloody nightmare, okay? Let's not pretend they're not. But something about her specific word choices made it feel like they wanted her to be not just mildly autistic, but also a valley girl, and that didn't work for me at all. I also didn't care about her brother quest thing. For this recording, I listened to every single piece of dialogue in the game, as you know. I skipped nothing, because the voice acting was great everywhere, honestly, like standout performances everywhere. I skipped Balara's dialogue as much as I could because I just couldn't stand her. Worst character for me. I'm annoyed by it because she's got a heal and time slow, so she's mechanically the best character for you to have, and you get her from the first hour of the game. Lame. Moving on, Nev and Lucanus have an attempt at flirting between two people who don't know how to flirt, and one of them is trying while the other isn't really aware romance exists. I am much less into this companion romance than I am in the Tarsh and Harding one. You also get occasional moments between companions that aren't typical dialogue scenes, which I do like, by the way. Following on with Emmerich, you get to the culmination of his quest, and he becomes a hero of the Veilguard. He becomes a lich and looks super cool, but I actually cannot figure out how to make him look like a lich at all times, which is genuinely a real shame. I would prefer he looked like a lich all the time. There's a round table scene where the grand reveal that he's now a lich was spoiled early by Harding, and it's all played off as comedy, which I think is a good decision, as the ritual of him dying was played straight and was, honestly, for a fellow death-phobic chap, pretty intense. My thoughts on Emmerich overall. Okay, so stiff upper lip British guy is who I was expecting when Emmerich joined, and sure enough, he's kind of that. Except no stiff upper lip. He's a generally very excited and enthusiastic British guy with both a love and fear of death. He gives off an air of having enough money to be considered eccentric, not mentally ill. In general, I liked Emmerich, and the core of his character was focused on having such a fear of death that you dedicate your life to avoiding death, which includes a ritual in which you must die. What a man will do to avoid therapy, am I right, lads? Emmerich's personal story revolves around his companion, Manfred, an embodied wisp. This was definitely the companion story that gave me a decision I had to think the most about. Give up Emmerich's chance at his life goal for his friend, or honour his friend's sacrifice and use it as the push to finally attain his life goal. Both good options, both bad options. Hardest choice in the game, in my opinion. I also enjoyed his combat story with Hezenkos, who made a really good crazy scientist doing just the dumbest things in the name of evil. Oh, his unique trait, of course, being Manfred, and that you can make him a skullhead lich, which is very cool. On to the Harding and Tarsh relationship. Tarsh very awkwardly hands over a hairpin with a gem in it, because, if you recall, I suggested they give her a gem because dwarves like rocks. Brooke cuts the air by just straight up telling Harding that Tarsh is flirting, and that's it. Nothing goes further yet. With Balara, we light some braziers, and who cares about Balara? Wait, is it brazier? Brazier. It's not brazier. Brazier? Torches. Big ground torches, and who cares about Balara? Over to Tarsh at the... Over to Tosh at their mum's home, but as we enter, there's blood on the floor and she is missing. Calling in Isabella, we can smell Cutter, an NPC I literally don't remember at all, and something about the Dragon King. For some reason, this Cutter chap brought the letters of correspondence along with him to kidnap the mum that confirm he was the one that did it. And that is, hey, like, he's hoping to get turned into a fire breather like Tosh, which is one way to avoid having to actually figure something out. This isn't a detective game, I guess, so fair play. We learn the Dragon King is one of the Arntam who wants to be a dragon, drinks their blood and lives in a volcano. Very normal stuff. So we murder lots of Arntam on the way to the volcano and then enter it. We continue to murder Arntam, but also pick up chests for loot through this volcano as the Dragon King shouts at us, and Tosh is viciously against OSHA regulations around guardrails, which are for the weak.
No guardrails.
Safety is for the weak.
We defeat Cutter. It wasn't a red herring. He really did just straight up fumble his letters with the Dragon King at the site where he kidnapped the mother. Cool. A bunch more fighting, and we get to a cutscene where the Dragon King, Tosh, and their mother are all shouting across a wildly vast distance, which makes no sense. Tosh is surprised to find out that the Dragon King is also a fire breather. Absolutely no one is guarding the veil when it comes to this trans story once again, as the Dragon King says that he embraces how he was born while Tosh hides it. The Dragon King wants to drink Tosh's blood to get stronger, sure, why not? Hence the trap he laid to bring us to him. Apparently, the lesson the mother had been trying to instill to Tosh due to some ancient tablet was that through struggle, you find who you really are. A good message, but due to Tosh, it's pretty clear this means a singular thing, so let's get trans with it. The mother also says she's proud of Tosh, then the Dragon King straight up beheads her. Ouch, harsh, good luck recovering from that one. Canonically, is a healing spell going to work? I don't think so.
They are stronger than you will ever be.
Thanks for the pause on they. The fuck? Who needs to reconcile where you just kill them? Okay, fine. Seems silly. So we fight some high dragon called Kaltanzan, which once again is nothing like the first high dragon we killed when under leveled.
Look out for the dragon!
Look, thanks for it. Hadn't noticed, mate. Oh, you fucking, oh my fucking AIDS. There you go. Tosh then dragon breath melts the Dragon King, and then Tosh gets a goodbye with their mother, which is mad because very clearly the mother was beheaded. Back at the lighthouse, we have our final decision. Encourage their Ravani heritage or their Kunari heritage, and we choose Ravani because honestly, the Kun never made any sense for Tosh, so that's just something I never cared about for them. And that is Hero of the Veilguard for Tash. And that is Hero of the Veilguard for Tosh. So, Tosh, the only companion that actually gets their negative explored. The autism of Balara was glossed over as quirky, the amputation of Nev was literally never mentioned, the gender of Tosh was her focal point. First, their character. Tosh actually made a really good first impression for me. In a game where every character wants to spit a dozen sentences at you when you first meet them, Tosh doesn't really want you there and gives you monosyllabic answers. This was refreshing and cool, big fan, liked it. This tendency to be curt continues throughout the game and really good, I liked it. Good juxtaposition. The other side of her writing is the, and I don't like to use the phrase, but the Marvel writing, you know? And I think that's the core of where this character went wrong. They use so much modern lingo above and beyond what other characters use that they really stand out. On par with Balara, maybe. It's almost like they were written a certain way to be Marvelized, right? And no one had the authority to push back against whoever wrote those lines. In fairness, it was only a few, but they really stuck out. Then she feels that she would be more comfortable as a man. So I was then quite surprised that they wanted to be non-binary instead of male. But that's fine, you know, sure. Just not what was stated in the text. However, this leads to my main issue with Tosh. Non-binary is such a modern term, it's ludicrous to use it in a fantasy setting. This whole storyline of theirs would have been better if they had literally just never used the word non-binary. Literally change the verbiage. It instantly grounds their entire story in the modern day, and that then elevates their other word choices. And it's just super weird. And the whole thing just feels really, really forced and weird because we are facing off against evil gods. But even the evil gods are careful to not misgender Tash, which is just crazy from the writers. Ultimately, Tash's entire identity crisis was purely to do with themselves because, and this is a big issue, literally no one around them in the entire world had any issue with her non-binariness, including the bad guys. I actually feel the entire non-binary plot was undercooked as it raised zero interesting points outside of every companion having a question of self-identity. But to use such modern vocabulary and then not raise any points is bad, and the writers should feel bad for those two things. Vocabulary combined with 0 points actually made. Aside from that, Tasha's relationship with her mother is incredibly frustrating to watch, but in a good way, because clearly Tash is just 100% in the wrong, and when her mother reaches out to be on Tash's side, Tash freaks out over literally nothing, which is good. Flawed characters are good. I was annoyed AF, as foretold, watching Tash and their mother interact, but in a good way, not in a Balara way. Literally everyone in this story was fully accepting of them wanting to be non-binary, including the mother, and Tash still whined about it. I would have liked some actual opposition to justify Tash feeling as they did. Also, this entire storyline has the subtlety of a brick, from the word choice to the Darvo push-ups, to the binding of their chest. At first, I thought it was going to be subtle with the discussion of her very clear issue with deciding if they want to be Riveni or Canarian, raised one way but feeling a pull to another, etc. But that turned out to be a minor aspect to the actual issue of being non-binary. Almost as if they first wrote the conflicting backgrounds as the trans allegory, but then changed it to be explicit in the text and just didn't remove the original Riveni thing. It's two storylines that deal with an identical issue. Ham-fisted is all I'll say. And yes, the bit where they sit down and Tash just blurts out their non-binary is highly memeable. Nothing to be done about it though. But none of this is Tash's actual unique trait. That is the fact they can breathe fire. This seemed fine to me in the sense that if we can have a dwarf do magic, we can have a Canary breathe fire. Sure, why not? Sounds fine. And it's also the focus of the action side of her story, and I actually liked how this all went. The old castle ruins down to a volcano, and then killing the Dragon King and losing their mother. Overall, I liked Tash and would rate them in the top half of the companions easily. Yes, I was incredibly frustrated by some parts of their speech being too modern, but aside from that, really good companion. Back into the breach, and Nev is meeting with her Threads contacts in a tavern. A bunch of talking about everyone wanting to make sure that we kill Aelia, not just capture her, because the authorities are now just her allies, and we enter a market and start blasting. We enter the Sanctum Lusicanum and kill more Venatori. We find Aelia, a clearly power-hungry blood mage. We get a pop-up telling us that Nev vows to protect Docktown by any means necessary, which again, I guess means that if we hadn't let Minrathous get dragoned, we would have the option to de-escalate and hand Aelia over to the authorities, who at this point wouldn't just be Venatori. The Aelia fight is an interesting one. We need to take down connected blood crystals which explode if not taken down in time, all as ads are constantly spawning. Interestingly, Aelia talks of how both Minrathous and Tevinter is broken and she wanted to set things right. The blood magic is a bit of a giveaway though, but let's ignore that. And presumably in the alternate timeline, Nev could have seen her point of view and worked with her, but in this one, we hand her over to the Threads, who are more than happy to just straight up shank her. Back at the lighthouse, and Balara is writing a book that is totally not about us, totes, and the fighting is going well, but she can't figure out the motivation, so she asks us, why are we doing all of this? Brooke says, someone has to, so why not us? Over on the coast, Tosh is reading the tablet that their mother was translating as it required fire breath to unlock. They come to the conclusion that their mother was the only one who actually believed in them, so that's great. And I've said my stuff about Tosh, so I'm going to ignore it at this point. I wrap up random quests for the next hour before meeting Harding in a very different climate. She is thanking us for telling her to be empathetic when she had to deal with the Titan, and then goes to show to other dwarves that she can do magic, so they kind of revere her a little bit. We see these two Grey Wardens, the elf and the dwarf, the husband and wife combo, who I've literally never mentioned the names of because you won't remember and I didn't like them really. But they send us to a castle of blighted wardens for Davrin. We take out some bad guys and bump into our good friend, the First Warden. Apparently, Gillenane did their worst, but then he was found and saved by the Gloomhowler. Here comes the negative for me punching him back at the invasion of Weishaupt. I am unable to reason with him. Which honestly, as he's a mega infected blighted guy, my biggest shock is that he could have been reasoned with in this state at all. So we kill him. We then run into Isaiah, aka the Gloom Howler, and have a caster boss fight with added cyst blight popping duties. We then have a bizarre conversation with her as she explains her reasoning. She wants to free them from the Grey Warden's control by killing them. She's gone ultra crazy, basically, but still very odd that she wants to stop and have a chat with us. We then drop Assad off with his family, which he says goodbye to and then comes with us. It would have been kind of cool if you actually could lose some characters by making them content and happy, but no luck. And with Assad's family saved, Davrin gets Hero of the Veilguard. Around having to learn that being a protector can also mean being a nurturer. Fine. Sounds funny to us that he didn't realise they're one and the same, but in his mind, protector just meant fighter, right? His demeanour never really changed, just his outlook. I'd say that's a negative. But otherwise, upon reflection, I do really like Davrin as a character, but I didn't really care that much about his emotional arc of protector to nurturer. His special trait is that he has a griffin, an animal thought to be extinct for generations, but it turns out there are still 14 in existence. But maybe 13. But his story of finding the fallen Grey Warden was pretty cool and had some good set pieces, so I liked that. It also reveals new lore, as until now, as far as I know, one of the big things about Grey Wardens was that they couldn't be affected by the blight. But now they can. I'm not sure how, but they can. So that's a thing. I don't think I like it, but the Grey Wardens in general are depicted as much more realistic and normal in this game than I thought of them as. They're an army of prisoners, thieves, murderers, and PDF files who had the choice of 100% death by hanging, or the joining ritual, which is only like 99% chance of death. And if that's the moral character of Grey Wardens, then yeah, why should they also be incorruptible by the blight? Screw it. This had become a little bit of a Grey Warden rant, but yeah, Davrin's fine. There's only Nev left for the Hero of the Veilguard, and I was honestly thinking of not doing that and just getting straight to the final boss. Except as I've played for the last 47 hours, I figure, screw it, I'm here, I'm in, I'm committed. I'll just clear up every quest because why not? So for the next 4 hours, I do everything else in the game. We do Tarsh's final quest where we learn what a barv is. I think this is actually a fine concept. You know, the whole actions speak louder than words thing, and if you're actually sorry for misgendering someone, take action. Very cool. Does it need to be in a Dragon Age game? Clearly not. No. Is it bizarrely self-indulgent for the writers? Again, clearly yes. But accepting Tarsh as a character, this seems a nice addition to discussion around them, so that's fine. I run through finding all of the remaining wolf statues to fill in Solus's regrets and backstory. Solus used the gods' own lives to create the veil disconnecting the Fade from the real world, which in his defense also held back the blight that the gods had created. So actually a pretty big W for Solus there. Although it did remove the elves from immortality, bit of a negative. We also have the team sitting around discussing the religious implications, and from the sounds of it, I suspect that a lot of what is being said here is very much outright stating certain things that were only hinted at in past games. The major religion of Andrasta is wrong, and it was actually built by the elves, or some such. That's the general gist. Then it turns out that ancient elves were actually just spirits who chose to take on physical form, and to keep their power they had to take lyrium from the Titans, which is what created the Blight and the Titans' anger. There's talk that if everyone knew about this, the already downtrodden elves would receive even further prejudice. And it turns out it was Solus himself that created the lyrium dagger we now wield, which did the destroying of the Titan's mind. All because he was in love with another ancient elf, Mythal, who we have mentioned before. Then we find out that Solus felt compelled to fix what he's broken all those millennia ago, and so to regain his power, killed the last remaining fellow ancient elven god and lover, Mythal, so that he could have power to remove the veil. The main takeaway here is that he is 100% determined to do what he set out to do, remove the veil, and if he's willing to betray his lover to do it, then he'd definitely betray us. With Solus's regrets wrapped up, we go and meet the leader of the Arntarm in Treviso, the Butcher. I'm going to be honest, his face looks super weird and kind of funny. Remove his big helmet and make him not twice my size, and this will be a joke character. Very odd design and decisions. Anyway, the Butcher genuinely loves Treviso. He has deliberately not annihilated the crows despite having the power to do so. And of course, this all makes sense when you remember that the Qunari are all psycho warrior religious nutters that only value strength and a lack of emotion, except anger. That's the cliff notes for their religion, by the way, the Qun. So the Butcher wants to save Treviso by helping us find Gillenane, which will allow us to save Treviso, but to find out where the god is, he will have to give himself over to their calling. He's going to do so after he's talked with us so that we can follow him to the ritual site where the gods are, knowing that we will have to kill him immediately after. Say what you will about the Butcher, but the guy's got principles. So, we smash the corrupted Butcher and find out that the final ritual will take place at Tearstone Island. I assume this is the ritual to create the red lyrium dagger. Then that governor guy that's clearly the traitor turns up and says that he gave up the crows to stop the Arntarm from going on a big kill streak, so he confirms he's the traitor. As I said, no twists there. I hop over to the forest and have my second and final chat with Morrigan in the game. She tells us about Mythal and that when she protested about the use of Blight, the other gods killed her. But didn't we just learn that Solas killed her? I'm a bit confused now. She also tells us that a shard of Mythal still resides in the crossroads, and if we can survive the encounter, whatever we gain from it will surely help us. It's said this way because, from what I can tell, you get the benefit whether you have done the required pre-quest to give the dialogue and then choose the correct dialogue to avoid combat. I think if you just fight Mythal, you get a powerful artifact weapon, but then later she doesn't help, or vice versa. So whatever happens, you get to fight Mythal. If you've done lots of stuff, you get like an artifact. If you haven't done lots of stuff and you're just speeding through the game, you can still get a cool weapon. So we meet with the Shard of Mythal and have to navigate our way through the conversation with what we know about Mythal and Solus's motivations to guide us. I say I'm worthy and that I'm fighting to protect the world, and she says that a tyrant can fight to protect their land and claim it's to protect the people. I figure I picked wrong because that sounds like she's saying no bro. Continuing, I give the example that Nev fights to protect Docktown, and somehow that works. We gain Mythal's favour. We gain a little Mythal statue which will call her to us during our greatest struggle, apparently. We also get Mythal's Light, which is a unique sword. We then have the final thing to do before the end quest, and that is to kill the Heart of Corruption through the Blight pathway. A pathway that had been known to us but locked since we first entered the crossroads. Opening the blighted door took the souls of the biggest and toughest Blight champions in the game, and what does it give us access to? It's the Revenant Dragon, which, as I'm appropriately leveled, poses less threat than my first High Dragon. Still, I do enjoy these dragon fights, great sense of scale, so very cool. Our reward is a unique ring that I never use. Over to Nev, and the Threads guy is saying some stuff that's quite boring, which gives Nev her Hero of the Veilguard, which means every companion is now a Hero of the Veilguard. So, what are my thoughts on the final Hero of the Veilguard? Nev is an interesting character, a very standoffish and pragmatic person. I really put her through the ringer in my playthrough as she had a black eye for the first few hours, and then her city got half destroyed. My bad on that one. Where every character has a special and unique thing that is a core part of them, Nev doesn't. She's just a detective who seems very cold to start, but as things progress, we find that she grew up in a cold world and decided that she wanted to bring security to those like her. She wants to protect Minrathous, and she'll do what she needs to get that done. I honestly didn't even notice she had an amputated lower leg for like a few hours. It's worth noting, but I don't think it's ever actually brought up in the game at all, which, considering how they treat certain other aspects, just seems really weird. Maybe it gets mentioned one time, but yeah, amputee representation in a fantasy world seems cool, no issues for me, but it's not explored at all. If you give a character something that would obviously be an issue, but then never mention the issue, just give them a regular leg. I guess it depends how you want representation, of course. You can go Nev or you can go Tarsh, basically. Dragon Age is the kind of game where that sort of thing is good and should be explored at least somewhat during the 50 hours of game I played. I never grew to really enjoy Nev, and her little slanted hat was always a bit silly, but she's a good addition to the cast. Good character. Okay, final quest before the end quest, and it's to kill the counsellor in Treviso who was all sassy when the butcher died to help us, if you recall. We run through poison gas, and the crows want him to be put on trial for his crimes, not just killed, because that sounds exactly like what a group of assassins would want. Right. The beginning of our final chain of quests is meeting the Inquisitor in a tavern. Very D&D, I know. We kind of have a summary chat about whether or not we trust Solus's motives and have a vibe check on him. Me, at this point, I don't know. He's been pretty good to us in the few interactions so far. The Inquisitor was Solus's lover, which apparently is the canon ending to Dragon Age Inquisition. At the lighthouse, we have our final roundtable meeting. All the chads in one place one final time. It's now or never, as an eclipse is coming in 1 month's time, and that's all the gods need to create their red lyrium dagger, which will allow them to tear open the Fade. 1 month's time, right? Why are they doing that again? Right, so the red lyrium dagger will allow them to resummon the Blight. Now, I know that the Blight seems like it's already here, but I guess it isn't. But the Blight will give them power, so there you go. They want power. Cool. Again, they're already free. I don't know why they need more power. Solus is imprisoned. They're free. Pass. Moving on. So we meet Morrigan and have a rundown of our allies. And because I've maxed out all of my reputations, of course, everyone is all in. We are all balls deep. We are all drowning in it, if you know what I mean. But we'll be putting things in place for the next month until the eclipse, when, who would have guessed it, an eclipse hits. Back to the lighthouse, and we have one final chat with Varric where nothing of any interest is said again, and then it's to the Isle of the Gods for the final mission. Amusingly, this really is the final mission, but it's 3 hours from me starting it to me hitting credits. It is a very long gameplay piece, which feels suitably epic for the final of a 50-hour game at this point, so that's not a negative, I'm just pointing it out. So we start on a beautifully eclipsed beach with the entire Arntarm Navy and army protecting the island, which, yes, we managed to get past. Don't worry, they hung a lantern on it again, so it's fine. Lanterns doing a lot of hanging in this game. We're going to split in two, and half the team will distract the army, while the other goes covert ops. Davrin says he wants to lead the distraction team, but Harding jumps in to say she's a scout so can move around faster. Which is just a terrible, terrible argument. Surely we want the covert ops team to be moving faster, right? Anyway, look, it's not much of a choice here because Harding is my main squad, so I don't want to send her off. So I let Davrin run distraction. With that decided, the plan of action is to take out Gillenanes first because her archdemon is gone, so she's vulnerable, and until Elganan's archdemon is killed, he's invulnerable still. And so we begin our stroll down a beautiful beach and through an Arntarm camp filled with mortars and me being an absolute cheese lord with my infinite arrow bow spam. We see some of the distraction group's efforts in the distance, but continue on. We get our first sighting of the archdemon and have a brief meeting with the distraction team on the other side of some bars. We're off the beach now and fighting our way through ruins and blight and maybe even blighted ruins. A lot of husk destroying and boil popping to open doors. We rejoin as a group and I haven't lost anyone from the distraction team, so I assumed that I had high enough reputations to keep everyone alive at this point. Good job me. Balara notices there are wards blocking our way forwards and suggests they're vaguely familiar, so she should deal with them. But Nev says that wards are her entire thing, which they are, so she should. Very unsurprisingly, I let Balara deal with the wards, because maybe I'm lucky and she dies, right? Even though I maxed her rep, Elganon actually jumps out of the wards and tentacle blights her real good. Looking at the next screen, we see Balara isn't just faded out, she cannot be picked. She's got a broken sword icon, so maybe she's actually just died, which is pretty crazy. I didn't expect it with all reps maxed out. But then maybe she's not dead. I'm not quite sure. There's no tutorial on what a broken sword icon means, right? We have more fighting, and then we see that Davrin got ahead with his team and is fighting Gillenane. We catch up, and Evil God Lady snatches away both of our companions, and so we have to begin the fight by soloing her. After killing ads for ages, I finally figure out that they won't stop spawning, so I focus on the boils, which eventually opens up my companions, and soon enough we're back to a proper 3-man team. This was a really cool twist on a fight, I like it. With the god at about a quarter health left, we go into a cinematic, and she has us all strung up by her tentacles. Lucanus goes for the Lyrium dagger kill, but gets caught. Asan plays distraction and Davrin goes for it, but it takes Asan plays distraction and Davrin goes for it, but takes a tentacle to the guts. And somehow, rather shockingly, that is actually Davrin dead. And Asan, the absolute knob jockey, just flies into the pit after him. What? Anyway, at this point, I'm thinking Asan could save Davrin, right? It definitely feels like he could pop back up, like the man in black from The Princess Bride coming back out of the fire pits, you know? But anyway, he's dead. Lucanus takes this distraction and kills the god. Cool. We then get the confirmation that Davrin is 100% dead, which obviously is a very mixed feeling. Elganon does some funky god power stuff, and so Rook grabs the Lyrium dagger, which banishes him to somewhere in the Fade. This is clearly supposed to be all of his doubts, as we've got lots of voices telling us how bad we messed up, and it's all gone black and white. And where else have we seen black and white fade? That's right, we're in Solus's little prison dimension fade, whatever that is. Is that the veil? I don't know. And sure enough, Solus takes the dagger from us, which releases him from the prison, but traps us. We run through this washed out fade prison and have to kind of face ourselves. We first talk to a Balara statue which claims we picked her to die. We say that's wrong, which it is, because just straight up, at that point, I didn't know who was going to die. But to be clear, if I could have picked Balara to die, I would have. Like, let's not make any mistakes. There's some deeper meaning implying that we treat them as resources to be expended, but that just isn't true. Like, at this point, I'm wondering if the writers even read their own script back, because the Rook we were forced to play acted nothing like this. There's no ambiguity here, so it falls a little bit flat, I feel. Davrin is the next statue and doesn't say anything bad, just says he'd do it again, and we get to say goodbye, you know, like, because we know he's dead. So I like this. We get to actually say goodbye to the character that just died. A little bit of closure for us. We then get a flashback to the start of the game talking to Varric, and we rewatch the opening scene, and it turns out that all this time, Varric had been dead. In fact, he was just a little hallucination blood magic from Solus onto our Rook. There you go. And that's fine, I don't care. And this twist, because it is a twist, does nothing at all. A twist like this is supposed to hit as a massive recontextualization of everything you've seen up until now. You know, like Sixth Sense, right? That's what you're meant to get at this point. But Varric had nothing to do with the entire game, and I didn't remember him at all from the past 2 games, so I didn't care about him. So he's just been a lump lying in a bed for the 40 hours. Like, who cares? So him being gone is completely irrelevant. It didn't recontextualize anything. This is a total miss. Varric was dead the whole time? Fine, that literally changes nothing. I don't really care. I genuinely do not know what they intended with Varric's inclusion and his realization of being a dead person the whole game. Literally, I don't know what his purpose was. I have to assume that somewhere throughout the making of this game, Varric's actual purpose was lost. However, whatever, moving on. So, Varric does tell us of Solus's motivation, which is wanting to be a hero. There you go. And then we escape the Fade prison, very literally once again, with the power of friendship, which does a good job of why we could escape, but Solus or the other gods couldn't. It's lonely at the top for those elvish gods, but we have friends, so can. We then get, instead of a Varric cartoon, because he's now known as dead, an Elganon cartoon, where he confirms he's in the Archon's palace above Minrathous for us. Back at the lighthouse for another round table, and we just kind of confirm that Solus has the dagger, so we can't kill Elganon without that, and there's still an archdemon to kill before even that is possible. But there is a fake dagger that we created a while back before finding the real one, so we have a fake if needed. Oh, and Balara is still in unknown whereabouts, but not dead, so there you go. We then get a cinematic showing all of our allies, and because I maxed out the game, I have everyone in attendance. And this is our divvying up of allies to fight the different threats as we plan our assault on the Archon's palace. Someone to deal with the wards, and we pick Nev, of course. Someone to deal with the Venatori mage commander. I go Lucanus, literally an assassin of mages, easy pick. Then we need something to take down a giant enemy monster, and I figure if it's a giant monster, it has to be Tarsh. That's her entire shtick. Which leaves me with my main homies, Emmerich and Harding, in my party. This then leads to a 5-minute cutscene of all the matchups I chose doing their thing. Now, because I completed everything and didn't have to decide on any bad matchups, I actually don't lose anyone and all of my plans succeed. This really just reminds me why I like to lose myself in fantasy games, where the real fantasy is that through hard work and dedication and thoroughness, one can actually find success, unlike the RNG gambling, yet predetermined hellscape that is the real world. I mean, just look at this channel. If you've made it this far in the video, you are a 0.0000001%er of YouTube. Jesus Christ, what are you doing here? What do I have at this point? 3 subs? I mean, great, but like, no one's here. We know it. Moving on. Anyway, we need to find Solus, and as we run along, finally able to see the super cool flying Archon's palace in the skybox again, we see it has blight tendrils all over it and Minrathous now. We stumble across a cutscene of a Venatori mage beating off Lucanus, but another crow gets him the win. Kill some stuff, the Viper and Tarquin are fighting off some tendrils and thanks Solus for keeping them alive, so we now get to have a chat. Awkward.
Get out of my city!
Jesus Christ. Get out of my city, you slag! He cops to the fact that killing Varric was something he did, which we already knew, but it's nice that he knows it as well, I guess. He says that everything he did was because he believed that only he could save the world, but now accepts that maybe Rook could too, so we should team up. We say that for us to help him, we want the veil to stay in place, and he agrees. We then run through some fights with Solus fighting alongside us, but he's not actually very impressive, which is a bit of a shame, right? I don't notice any damage he's doing above any other companion. I feel they could have splashed out and thrown like 6 massive ogres at us and have him handily one-shot all of them in 30 seconds while all we do is like dodge massively or something. But oh well, it is what it is, right? Just we're finally fighting alongside a god. If we make Solus really, really strong for this 30-second fight, then it will really raise the stakes when we get into Elganon later, right? He says we need to destroy the mind that is guiding the blight, which I assume means Gillenane, but I'm pretty sure we just killed her, right? Solus says he can't go any further because his presence will only draw the blight to us. We also see Balara, but not sure if she's actually alive and if she's still got her own mind. Maybe the Davrin or Harding choice dies in a sacrifice, but the Balara or Nev decision is someone you have to fight, is what I'm thinking here. That's what she deserves for being so annoying, to be clear. The Archdemon also catches up with us at this point, and Solus says there's no time for us to fight it, so he will fight it for us. He then gives us back the Lyrium dagger and says that once the Archdemon is done, we must be the one to strike the final blow, and that is very odd and clearly a trick. We get a boss fight from one of those weird diamond-shaped golem guys called Elganon's Wrath, and that frees Balara. She says we can't kill Elganon yet, because if we do, and then gets interrupted by the Archdemon. Morrigan jumps in to stop us from being crushed by a rock, and then we meet up with Tarsh and the Inquisitor. We then have the final rest stop before the end stint, and we get a ruined corridor with all of our allies and faction leaders and such hanging around. So I talk to them, and that's a nice final goodbye for the game. I feel really good stuff. We then talk to Balara, and she tells us that Elganon's life force is tied to the Veil. So if we kill him, then the Veil will be destroyed as well. Which is exactly what Solus was trying to do at the beginning of the game, if you recall, right? Destroy the Veil, which will unleash the demons on the world. No, I don't understand that either. Let's just go with it. Magic is gonna magic. It's fine. So basically, our solution is that before we kill Elganon, we need to tie the Veil to another elven god, of which Solas is the only other option. So we need to draw his blood with the Lyrium dagger, then kill Elganon with it. We also have a fake dagger that we could swap in for the real one if needed. Be a little sneaky ourselves to the God of Lies. It's a good plan, right? Or is he the God of Lies and therefore is going to see our deception? And we also remember in a very vague way that we have Mythal's blessing if we think we can turn Solus's decision, but we don't know what it's actually going to do. But they're talking about it in the game as if it's like obvious what it's going to do, but it is not to me. We then get the opportunity for one last talk with every companion, which we do, and nothing of narrative note happens, so we get a cutscene showing everyone ready and climbing the giant blight tendril to the Archon's palace. We do lots of fighting and boil popping while the Archdemon swans about in the background. It turns out that all of the blight is being redirected towards Solus and he needs our help. In fairness, he really is fighting to help us at this point, as we do have the same interim goal here. Oddly, we don't just have a big Archdemon or Magister mini-boss fight, we just get straight to the final Elganon fight. He's a very suitable end boss, I think. He is very magic based, throwing a lot of spells and doing a lot of different magical tricks. We then go into phase 2, where we also see Solus losing his fight, which I thought we were supposed to help him before we did our big boss battle, but I must have missed something there. Phase 2 is a dodge fest, as we can't deal damage into this darkness thing he's doing to us. Another cutscene, and Balara sits on Elganon's throne and allows the Blight to overtake her, reforming the bond with the Blight and then using her willpower to release Solus, who then manages to one-shot the Archdemon. A bit of a contrivance, because up until this point, they were even, or the Archdemon was winning. This sudden turnabout is just odd, but like, whatever, you got to wrap the game up at some point, right? Also, shame on me for making Balara important to the story. I regret it, but it is what it is. Obviously, killing the Archdemon makes Elganon mortal and takes him to phase 3. He's now a fire-based caster fight, but with added melee attacks to deal with, along with this new series of spell attacks. Honestly, still really good, and I think I only managed it so easily because, of course, I'm wildly overleveled. This is our final fight done. Which brings us to, as we would expect, our final conversation, which will define the outcome of the game. Because we have done everything else in the game to the highest standard, all that means is that we have every option available to us. If I pick the wrong dialogue options, I can still get the bad ending. So, Solus starts his evil speech about how he's going to betray us and still bring down the Veil. First option is letting him take down the Veil, fighting him in combat, or talking more. I of course go for talking more. I point out the extra harm he will cause and says that the world is already broken because of his mistakes. Say what you will, but this is a guy who has a belief. It's clearly a wrong belief, and with the evil gods defeated, I actually genuinely do not know why he still wants to bring down the Veil, right? But whatever, he believes in it. I tell him he's trapped in regret. I hand him the dagger and tell him to bind the Veil to himself. He slow walks to the Veil and hits us with a "I cannot." What a loser. Oh my gosh, he got us. He cucked us hard, guys. But the Inquisitor shows up and gives him some chat about love or some bollocks. But he points out, pretty fairly in my opinion, how messed up it would be if he stopped right now at the final hurdle for all those he'd already hurt to get to this point. Morrigan turns up and reveals that Mythal lives on in her. You know, Solus's biggest regret, right? Mythal absolves him of his duty to right the wrongs that she inflicted upon the world and upon him, and in return for his renewed joie de vivre, he binds the veil to his own life force. He cannot immediately stop the Blight or the Titan's anger, but he will try and seek atonement. Then he disappears. And the final is a wrap-up from a Varric cartoon saying that everyone's happy thanks to the power of friendship. And that is Dragon Age Veilguard fully complete. Every single quest, every single boss, every single collectible. I mean, I think, roughly, I don't know. Not that you can tell in this video, but I didn't skip a single line of dialogue. I listened to everything, except Balara. But that in itself is a good thing. It shows that the characters are actually characters and not just copy-pasted angry or happy or sad generic dudes and dudettes. In fairness, they all started as pretty low to mid in my mind, but raised themselves up through the course of the game. Again though, they really needed a more, shall we say, generically instantly likable character to balance out the assortment of oddballs we got. Now, that generic instantly likable character should have also ended up an oddball, but we all know what I mean, right? I guess the highest praise I can give for the mechanics is that at the end of the game, I found myself craving more combat. That happened with Expedition 33 and Veilguard and really not many other games I've ever played. So clearly, something here really did hit the spot, even if I had to push through that muddy middle to get to the fully realised combat system. Overall, solid story, very classic high-stakes fantasy, some questionable writing at times, but in a 50-hour game that will happen, so really not that big of a deal, and would have actually been fun to meme on, if the grifters hadn't stolen that from us. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the most beautiful looking games out there. It is literally my wallpaper. So yeah, all things considered, great game, really enjoyed it. Check out my other videos, drop a comment, and I stream on Twitch sometimes if you like unedited, boring content, because that's what Twitch is. I'm probably grinding Warcraft despite claiming I'm a variety streamer. Bye.